That is some good stuff right there. That was a good batch of coffee. Definitely a good batch of coffee. I'm just like gonna put this computer to sleep for a while. Shut down. Goodbye. Good night, work computer. Yeah, they're like making me use a Windows machine at work, and I've been complaining all week about it. I've been so complaining. May you never be forced to use a Windows machine. You know, when I was at IBM for 15 years at IBM, and 3 years I was at Nike, and the 3 years I was at Teleport. All of that time I used nothing but Linux. In fact, when I was at Teleport, I used, believe it or not, I used an Intel P2 with no graphic interface. I had nothing but a screen and the screen app to do it all. And didn't regret it at all. It was fantastic. I loved it. I really did. I really loved it. I was able to do my job just fine. I was doing mostly I was doing all back-end work and just using email and everything. It was funny because that was the time. So what was that? 90, had to be 96, 97. That was when I promised myself I was never really going to use graphic interfaces anymore. And I used Mutt, and I learned Nano, actually Joe, and then I learned Pico, and then I eventually learned VI, and then I did all my email on Mutt. And I mean, I was using the terminal from like 96, 94, 95, 96, something like that. The mock Linux system I had, yeah, same thing. Because, I mean, you got to remember, it was hard to get graphics to run back there in those days with Linux. So you had to like work at it. You had to like use your Xconfig and everything. So yeah, I'm going to turn on the chat. If you have questions for the next 40 minutes, I'm just going to answer questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to ramble on about whatever. Hopefully not too ranty today. I'm going to pull up Discord though real quick. That's where we put all of we have our Discord AMA channel. Not everybody can always make it here for this, so yeah. Yeah. Why do people get so excited about mechanical keyboards? They're so totally horrible. I just don't get it. Not to mention they're bad for your health. All right. Let's see. I'm trying to find something good in the AMA section here, and there's no questions. And there may not be any questions. That's totally fine with me. I'll find something else to do for a while. I keep like putting people away and pissing them off, and that's totally fine too. I don't care. As long as I'm helping the people that I care about that are willing to listen and make difference. I've always known that my approach only appeals to like 0.001% of humanity. I mean, it's like the approach of using the terminal in the world's most objectively fast human-to-computer interface. Not everybody's interested in doing that, and saying that kind of thing makes people get angry at you. How's it going, Programming Siri on YouTube? I see you there. Here's a question. Let's start with that one. Is Haskell worth learning? I'm going to write this down. I'm going to do better this time. So, first question. So, yeah, let's go ahead and answer that. Yep. I don't know if we should do it at the first part or at the end. What do you think? Do it down here. Shall we do that? Is Haskell worth learning? Yeah, I think so. I have not fully learned Haskell. I started with Haskell. And is this something I actually agree with DistroTube on? Very rare moment. Haskell was created, if I remember right. Let's go check. If if I remember right, Haskell was created as a language, an educational language for functional programming. And Haskell is really, really, really good at setting up parsing streams. So in fact, any pure functional language is really, really good at that. So it's absolutely the best possible pick, as far as I'm concerned, to do Pandoc, because Pandoc is all about parsing and transition, between then an internal AST, abstract syntax tree, into something else. Pandoc's AST actually kind of sucks. In fact, that's why I made Pagan, begn.dev, in order to make a better AST, so I could do some broader things with the translation. The AST for Pandoc is a little bit too limiting, and let me show you. So like if I do Pandoc, was it raw? I think it's I don't know. I think it may be AST. I can't remember. It's either AST or raw, but if you can get is it raw? I don't know which one it is. I'll have to figure it out. So this is HTML1 that parses. So this is how I got into Haskell, as I was playing around with the Pandoc source code. And actually, this is not an exaggeration, from studying the organization of the code in Pandoc's source code, I learned of an easy way to make a very complicated parser, and that's how I made Peg. I hadn't had any formal training in computer science, and it was at that time that I started to read in the books about rooted node trees and things like that are used to make an abstract syntax tree, which is what you get when you parse something, like this. I don't even think I have Pagan on here anymore. No. But I want to show you what this. Well, let's see. I'm going to if I let the Pandoc type. So it was really good, because what it did is it took every single function. There was basically one function for each type of thing that was going to be in the tree, and the function would assume a given state, and it would be given the stream at that point, and then it would return. It would emit or return a thing, and then it would leave the stream at a different location. And so rather than having this big, huge, long progressive descent sort of parser, if statement, essentially, big old switch statement with a loop, right? It would actually, there was none of that. It was just, there was one that started it, and it would call the first top level component, and then that would call all the other functions recursively. And I mean, it was just really freaking cool. So when I saw that was when I realized the power of functional languages specifically for parsing, really efficiently and in a way that's very well organized. So I really love that. I'm trying to find the type. AST abstract syntax. So yeah, JSON. Oh yeah, JSON. Yeah, here we go. So if I do Pagan readme and I do, was it to JSON or format? Is it F format? I can't. Is it type? Oopsie, Pandoc to JSON. Yeah, there we go. So run that through JQ. So this is what the structure of this document looks like, right? And each one of these is a token, and this is a type of token, and then the actual text. And so what they call the literal. And this is where I got the idea to make the AST for Pagan, which is a lot cleaner. It's a lot lighter. It's a lot cleaner. How's it going, TJ or TG? Okay, so we have somebody asking the questions about NeoVim. So let's move on. So I do think Haskell is very good, worthy of learning. I have opinions about what languages I think you should first learn, and they change every year because I deal with all kinds of different beginners, and it's really hard to know. When somebody asks you what languages you should learn first, so let's just answer this really quick. When somebody asks you what language you should learn and what language in order and all that stuff, you're automatically assuming a lot about them. So the first question should usually be to the person, well, what do you want to do? And a lot of times they don't know what they want to do. We talked about that last week. And so it's because they need to test out a bunch of different languages and technologies before they actually know what they want to do with their life. And then you can help them know. But the best possible estimate that I can tell you, because everybody needs to learn Linux. There's never been a more solid example, Ben, the stuff that's been coming in my news alerts this week, there's like overwhelming evidence that you must learn Linux, and not only that, but you should learn Linux on the command line. Definitely learn containers, and Kubernetes is the new normal. In fact, there's the research study that came out on Kubernetes deployments across the enterprise this week was just insane. And so, whether or not you think you're never going to have to do it or not, you're just going to be a web developer at some point. All that tech is going to come into it's going to be presented to you. So the reason that I chose the order of the languages that I did, and I still continue to maintain, is because it's based on the broadest scope of applicability and empowerment. And so I'm going to say them again. So I still think you should learn Shell as your first language, specifically POSIX Shell first because it's simpler. And when you're first writing your first script, because you're already writing it when you use your terminal. Secondly, you should probably learn a little bit of Bash to go with that. I've been back and forth on this part, but I do think you should probably add more Bash to that because you're going to be writing containers that are going to be in Bash. And then I think I'm currently of the opinion that Go is at that point, after you know about if statements and stuff like that, you're kind of good to embark into, all of the other languages that have those kind of things. But if you're looking for just empowerment, JavaScript is phenomenal, but it's not a command line language, even though the Node and Dino people would disagree completely with that. The most practical command line language to learn would be Python. But Go and Python, there's a Go time today about pop quizzes and stuff I was listening to, and the guy talks about how you have to, when you transition to Go, you have to learn how to not write Python in Go. And he talks about not bringing your language biases with you. And I just could not more fully appreciate the idea that your first languages are going to shape your programmer mindset forever. So if your first language is Java, you're going to think in terms of single inheritance and classes for the rest of your life, and you're going to be fighting it the whole time. If you learn, object Python, then you're going to be fighting the same thing. Plus, you're not going to know what to do when the curly bracket hits you in the face. So my suggestion based on that is to learn Go, honestly. And I'm going to try to do Go as the first major language. I still think C is a very valuable one to learn at that same time. But it's C and Go, or Go on the Go's front page, it literally says a simplified C. That's exactly what it shot to be. That's what its own mantra is, to be a simplified C. And so, and once you get, and Go is the greatest utility language, and then of course JavaScript and HTML, CSS for web stuff, and Python to hook it all together. So you're going to need to learn Python. Those are the main languages. All the rest of the languages I think are super valuable to learn. But the reason I told you all that is because I strongly believe in the idea that you should experimentally learn one language a year if you are going into development in particular. If you're just kind of an SRE or an ops person, you might not need to do that. But every time you learn a new language like Haskell really seriously changed. Hey, how's it going? Haskell really seriously changed my approach to coding in Go and C. It's the first time that I actually truly wrote a true functional parser, and I was able to make a very complicated tool pagan that I could never have made had it not been without learning that little bit of Haskell that I learned. So my and that goes for, I still think after you've learned the other base languages so that your influences are solid, C, honestly, C, imperative programming in C should be the number one thing that you derive your, and that's why shell programming is fine, because shell programming is also imperative. I think Go has the best concurrency, and it's also got the easiest concurrency model for you to handle because it's just a bunch of sleeping threads. It's also consistent with POSIX threads, and it doesn't have any crazy abstractions like promises and all this other crap that blow the doors off your brain as a beginner. So that's why I really think that Go concurrency, or even POSIX threads. Last Miles on YouTube, he's been doing a ton of stuff with C POSIX threads. Now, and they're old school, but you know what? Anything that's concurrent today is ultimately using POSIX threads at some point underneath. So more or less, you might as well learn those things. My point being, as you're trying to pick your languages, pick languages that are going to have a solid sustainable, empowering influence on you, and then layer in the other ones that have edge cases. And that's where I would actually say you should learn Rust. You should learn NIM. You should, or NIM or Nix, I can't remember. You should learn, BrainF. You should learn these crazy languages because they're going to open your mind to what's possible. And then you can come back into your workhorse language, which is exactly what Go is. I actually made a thing on Go recently. Go is the world's most productive language, hands down. Hands down, it's the world's most productive language. You can get the most done in the least amount of time using the standard library that will run everywhere without any special hooks and whistles and virtual, this or that. So, focus on Java last year. And Java is actually a language everybody should learn eventually. I completely agree with that. C# too. I love C#. I'm going to say it. I might not like Microsoft. I might not have a lot of cause to do a lot of C#, but C# is a fantastic language to open your mind. C# really opened my Java mind up. Okay, so got some comments here. I'm learning C. I found the Head First C book not as good as I thought. What do you think about C, a modern approach? I don't know. That was all about C-lang and stuff. I discounted C, a modern approach when I read it. I don't know if I can get behind it. But I don't know. I think I don't have a strong opinion on C because I'm actually trying myself, to update my C skills. We're going to be doing some C coding later. And so C programming is, I think, really fun and really valuable to learn no matter what, even if you're not going to be doing anything with it. But if you want to do embedded or electrical, you're going to want to do it. I think that my next approach to C is going to be so I have Mastering Algorithms to C. I'm going to go through that book. And I don't know. I think probably the best way for you to learn C would be to dive in and write your first Linux kernel driver. Maybe I'm a masochist. Look, if you do all the things to study how to make a Linux C kernel driver that just says hello world on boot in your virtual machine when it's booting up, right? If you go through all of that, if you read the big long, Torvalds style guide and you're weighing, glibc versus the Muse and the Musel and the others and all that, and you learn how to do, compile and thing. It's really, when you learn C, it's like, well, what kind of style of C do you want to learn, right? And I want to. There's actually a book. I don't have it anymore. I don't think. It's called C for kernel for kernel development. It's probably really outdated right now. So that would be the one I'd probably want to try. But if you're a beginner, people who keep telling you to use the KNRC book, you should probably read that book at some point. But I don't know. My concern with the modern C book is I've heard a lot of really advanced people really tear that book apart up. Yeah, I've heard people that, I mean, I think Last Miles was one of them. I can't know for sure, but they had no love for the whole entire approach of the modern C book. So, but I don't have a strong opinion there because I don't have enough information. So I'm not the guy to ask about that. If you want to ask me about Go stuff, I can answer that because I'm current on that, or some of the Python stuff. Let's stick on the language thing for a while, and then I'll come back for some other questions. I think it was that you said starting with Python can make one language bigot. I agree. I'm somewhat afraid to try other things. But I'm a rookie and casual. I just left Tuck Driving to give a break into it. That's pretty consistent with my experience. And I don't mean it because, I made a lot of amazing fun things in Python that I really enjoyed and helped a lot of people learn it over all the years that I taught it officially and over all the years that I used it officially at IBM. For automation and deployment and everything. So, and there's a few things in Python that are really, really bad. And it's funny, I really am enjoying listening to the Go Time podcast because a lot of the people that are on the Go Time podcast have come from Python and other languages. And so you get to hear them share their experiences coming to Go from their language. And the one that I just most recently heard was a guy who came from Python, and he was expressing a lot of this. But once they just don't ever look back because they have so much other stuff that Python can't provide, even though they have relatively close to the same similarity in coding approaches now. That's great that you're trying something new. I love hearing about. So yeah, Nuke's Line says he left truck driving, take a break, trying to get into it. You like the beginner's boost outline? Okay, well, I hope it's for you. I get mixed feedback on it. So far, almost all of the feedback's been positive. I haven't had any real seriously negative feedback. I had one guy say, I can't believe you're doing this for free. This is worth thousands of dollars. And I was like, okay. Let's see. How do you work with Vim swap files? I don't. I turn them off. Yeah, we turn off some Vim swap files. Better, strong core language. Gibbs potential is, we're still on the language topic, so let's answer this question. Today, C is good for InfoSec, like reverse engineering and these kind of stuff. Yeah. So another reason that I think if you're in InfoSec, C is a mandatory language. There's just no, by the way, if you're in InfoSec, go read the blog post that I just made or look at the tweet or watch the video about malware is going up 2,000% in Go. Because a lot of these coders that are writing malware are writing it, they're taking C code and they're embedding it in Go. And so Go is becoming a popular language with hackers. I made a whole video on that because it's just so phenomenally good if you're going to go into InfoSec. A lot of the people that are, I'm aware of FinTech. I'm actually changing some of my opinions on FinTech. I want to talk about that. Don't forget that, Nafis. Let's talk about that. We got a lot of questions here. So let's hang tight. The question is, okay, so Gibbs says, is it not better to be better and one strong core language? I talked about this last week. Something called cognitive cache, and you can, or cognitive RAM, whatever you want to call it. It's just the laws of physics for most of us. You can't keep everything fresh. This language thing keeps coming up, so I'm going to answer it again. But the reality is you cannot have all the languages fresh in your head. So the number one skill to learn is how to look up stuff immediately. And that's why I want so many people to pay attention when I start doing the links terminal lookups, because you can look up at the specifics of any language within milliseconds, half a second usually, while you're writing it in another window. So it's more importantly than learning any language is learning how to look up stuff as fast as possible. I'm not talking with the graphic browser. So if you have that, then your swap speed is faster, right? Because you're going to have to go look stuff up. So like when I'm writing lately, I'm going to be doing a lot more of this tonight. So tonight, by the way, if you want to tune in later, we're going to have a boost. And after this, I'm going to be installing Jupyter Hub into Kubernetes with KubeSpawner in a completely vanilla. I'm trying to decide whether to use Kind or Microcube or Minikube. But if you want to see that, I'm going to be setting up Jupyter Hub and Kubernetes tonight in a single node cluster on my system because I need to do it. And plus, I also think it'd be fun for other people to see. Maybe they could chime in on that. So that's coming. But if you're in I have to use a lot of Python in there, and I have to look up that Python a lot more stuff. Yeah. So the problem, I do think it's good to have a strong language, but I don't think, like for example, for me, I have Go and Shell. Go and Bash right now are my strongest languages. They're really, really strong. And the other languages I have to look up. And then when I'm working on a web project, JavaScript is like right at the front of my fingertips, right? Perl used to be that for me for years, and I have to look it up the other day. It was really embarrassing. Or, for me, you have to like decide what language you're going to have. The Black Hat Go. I talked about Black Hat Go in that video, by the way, at the same time. Yep. So it depends on what you're trying to learn Go for. So another question here: what are the good resources for Golang? I've listed those. So let's see. rwx.gg/lang/go. There's a couple of new ones that have just come out. If you want to go look at those. There's a lot of stuff out there right now, but I haven't gotten through all the latest stuff. I'm about done with the Learning Go book from O'Reilly that just got released, which is really good. It's more of a mid-level kind of thing. Let's go back here. So another question: how do you work with Vim swap files? Can you help me understand what you mean by that? So this is programming. Siri said, how to work with Vim's swap files. And I think what they mean is, I think the question is this. I'm gonna go disable it actually. No swap. See that right there? If you turn this off, I don't use backups and I don't use swap. And these things, let's go read them. So help swap file. So use a swap file for the buffer. This option can be reset with the swap file is not wanted for a specific buffer. For example, with confidential information that must be root access. A swap file will only be present with update count in non-zero swap. So this, anytime you're doing anything with your buffers, the swap file keeps it there. So if you crash or something, it's still around. When the swap file is reset, the swap file for the current buffer is immediately deleted. When swap file is set and update count is non-zero, a swap file is immediately created. Also see swap file and swap sync. If you want to open a new buffer without creating a swap file for it, use the no swap file modifier. That's what I have used. I've turned that on, and I don't use that. I don't particularly need it. See directory for where the swap file is created. This option is used together with buff hidden and buff type to specify certain kinds of buffers. As I've told you before, I don't use a lot of buffers besides the main buffer because I would rather just output to a file and then pull the file in, which is essentially what buffers are already, what the swap is already doing. I can just use w/temp_foo and then pull it in. And I don't believe that that's much slower than I would be doing anyway. And it's also kind of in the Unix way because it's using, I could have it piped to a command and stuff like that. So I tend to avoid using swap files. So, you know, but other people might want to do that. It depends. I mean, that kind of gets back to another question, which I didn't really answer today. Let me go back to it. Somebody was asking about all the hubbub about NeoVim today. And I don't want this to become an anti-NeoVim rant. I've done enough of that in written form today. So it says, Gibbs says, hi, I was reading your chat this afternoon. I was wondering what calls attention to NeoVim. I just didn't follow very well what your concern about it was. I quickly Googled it, and it seems like people are really happy with the NeoVim features. Yeah, and that's the problem. If you really want to have an answer to the NeoVim problem, go read about it. Okay, so I've written a lot in the Zettelkasten here. You can read about it. I've linked to my objective analysis of all of the point-by-point changes in the changelog and lists of benefits for the NeoVim project. And I honestly, I know you won't believe this, I went into it with an open mind, and I came out of it actively campaigning against it because of how bad it is. It's so bad. It's just so bad. And it's particularly bad for beginners. Really, really, really bad for beginners. So much so that, and I said this today, that I used to ask people in my job interviews, there was 2 people that I interviewed, I got to ask, what's your editor and why? And I didn't ask it so much to say, oh, that's the right answer, you said Vim. I wanted to hear them articulate why they chose this tool for their toolbox and whether their choice of tools was consistent with the tools needed for this job that I was interviewing them for. And I've actually heard other people ask this question as well. And here's why. If you were going to interview somebody for a carpentry job and say, okay, this is a specific job, we need you to do crown molding everywhere. Tell us about your favorite hammer or your favorite method of doing it. And if they had nothing more than a claw hammer in their toolbox, if you know anything about crown molding, I'd be terrified. I'd be terrified of that person. I would say, well, are you telling me you do all this, I go, well, I have a claw hammer in here. It's because I use a pneumatic for all I use, nails and staples and stuff to put up the crown. I don't ever use it for that. But if they had some other hammer, if they had a ball peen or some other, hammer for like dealing with, problems like that, if I could see into their toolbox in any way, I can make a better, a conclusion about how good they would be at a particular task. And And that to me is valuable. These are very personal decisions. A keyboard is 100% personal. I don't have any input on that. But if you're going to try to tell me you're going to be an InfoSec person and you're going to use Emacs or VS Code for the whole thing and you have never used VI in your life, I'm not hiring you. I'm just not hiring you because that means you haven't done enough work in the area of it. And so if you tell me that you're only, if I look in your vimrc and you say what vimrc, I have an init.lua file, and that's it because I only use NeoVim. I'm buying you if you're going for any job in DevOps, operations engineering, infrastructure engineering, and InfoSec. If you are using NeoVim and your only configuration file is an init.lua file, and you think that's a good idea, then I'm not hiring you. Because it just shows how little you actually understand about the tools that are available. And not only that, but how much you've been influenced by the trends of the day. And right now, it's super trendy to love on NeoVim because it's new. It like thumbs its nose at Brahm and everybody else. But it's absolute crappy alpha software that barely got today, 0.5. It finally got, the syntax server, which Vim has had much longer than that, and it's been working fine. Why would you use alpha software that doesn't even have all the features of Vim in it, but has Lua and a bunch of other stuff that you don't really need when you could use the standard editor on all Linux systems for the last 2 decades? Which thing would you rather learn? All right, so you asked. So, and it has nothing to do with the people that are involved. I think they have extremely poor judgment on this particular point. And I'm sure they're wonderful people and have great families and everything. I just watched, I've been watching, I'm actually right in the middle of Civil War, and I love how they respect each other and kind of get hot under the collar on sometime, but they respect each other as human beings. They just radically disagree about this point. And that's my position with the people that are involved with NeoVim. Great people who have totally crappy decision making in this particular area. And I wish that NeoVim would just die because I'm seeing it affect beginners all the time. And they're coming at it from the wrong angle. And then they get, okay, that's enough. So what's the hubbub over NeoVim? So there you go. You can make your own decision, but I need to be a voice of reason out there to tell you that this is not what it is. Primegian is one of the most popular people to come in and just say that his way is the only way and to laugh you off if you disagree with him in a way that you can never argue against. And that's his style, and that's fine. He does it with TJ all the time. They just formed the Vim conference, and they're about to hold another annual online Vim Fest instead of what it really is. It's a NeoVim Fest. I guarantee you that anybody who goes into that Vim conference and suggests that NeoVim is inferior to the actual Vim will be run out of town. Because it's not. It's very much a NeoVim only group of people over there. And I don't think that's fair. I don't know. So yeah, TJ told me that they interviewed, that they asked Brahm to come, and of course he didn't show up. So by shell I mean bash. No, I don't. By shell I mean POSIX shell. The first shell you should learn should be POSIX shell, and we did a week of it. If you want to go back and watch the Beginner Boost videos, we did a whole week of learning POSIX shell as your first language, and how to use shell check to make sure that you're writing POSIX shell first, and then after that, layering in bash. Here's why. It's the idea of progressive enhancement as applied to learning. You want to learn something that you're going to build on. So if you learn bash first, and then you're like using all this stuff, and then you get forced to just run POSIX shell one day because you're doing containers, you're working on a security project or something in a government where you can't use bash. It's widened up a lot since then, but let's say they do that. You're going to do it wrong. You're going to do it wrong, and you're going to use the single bracket. This is why you should never, ever, ever use Z shell. Because Z shell causes you to be dangerous because it does things that if you do the same thing in POSIX, even though it claims to be POSIX compatible, it deals with them differently. And because you're thinking it's safe, when you are forced to write POSIX because your job requires it, now you're going to be writing unsafe shell code because you never learned it right in the first place. So learn POSIX shell first, layer bash on top of that, and if you really want, layer Z shell and fish for your scripting after that. And then now you've got a progressive understanding of how the shells work, and now you're not going to get busted, right? This is also the reason that I don't think Rust is a good first language. Rust, the idea is, oh, beginners are going to love Rust because you can just walk in and be safe and never hurt the world. It's the safest language in the world. Yeah, then go look at the dozens and dozens and dozens of CVEs against cargo stuff and really serious bugs that were called out in academic papers because beginners threw their hat in the ring and started writing crap that's completely unsafe and causing like serious security flaws all over the place. It was such a big deal that a group of PhDs got together and wrote a paper and said, this is not safe. Stop telling people this is safe. What is safe is progressive learning. Learn C. Learn the problems with C. Learn why memory management and doing your own memory hassles and off by one errors are all so insidious and horrible. Make some mistakes. Learn all of those things and then build on them so that you understand them first. Don't come to people and say, if you write in this language, you can never do anything wrong. And then and foster this idea that they don't have to be as careful with the language when they're writing system software. The idea that code would, those people who are beginning coders would come anywhere near the kernel just terrifies me because they're not being raised the right way. They're being raised to think, oh, hey, anybody can do it. And actually there is some cases where you need to have a healthy level of caution and skepticism in your own ability, because even if you go into it, you're still going to make problems because you can't even write kernel stuff unless you have unsafe set on half the stuff anyway. So you might as well learn to do it right and progressively layer on top of that. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm not specifically attacking those languages. I'm just attacking the idea that, and this is actually one of the problems with Python. So people come into Python and they don't learn anything else because they don't ever want to leave it. All right. It's funny. I've been working in a software company, just kind of focused on Java for the last year, and I stopped learning new languages. It's bad. Well, you got a job, right? I have a full-time job now too, and I mean, I've always had a full-time job. Before I was just employed by myself, and I, worked with kids and adults, teaching them stuff for the 8 years at SkillStack. But now you're right. I have to code what they're coding in, and that's right now it's Python. There's no Go whatsoever on this job. I mean, there's like one. We're trying to bring more Go into it, but yeah, but yeah, sometimes they're not going to pay you to learn it, so you just have to keep what's fresh in there. Yeah, let's keep going on here. So we're talking about languages here. People have asked me about Crystal before. I think I already answered that. Let me go check. I actually like Crystal a lot. I just don't. It's not anything. It's not getting any work done for anybody. So yeah. We're actually going to have, so guys, please stay tuned for the beginner boost, okay? We're going to spend a full day, 40 minutes, 40, 50, 60 minutes, something like that, on each language, each modern language. And that includes Crystal. After we get in with the Vim and Tmux stuff, we're going to go through every language. We're going to talk about what I think about it, what other people think about it, what people are using it for, what are its pros, what are its cons, so that you can make a decision about where you want to throw in your cognitive investment. What languages do you really want to learn? Because it takes a long time. It takes a long time, and it's going to impact you forever. So you might as well, you don't want to put it off too long, but you want to, my idea of Crystal. So I actually really like Crystal. Crystal is Ruby for people who want to go, or Crystal is compiled Ruby pretty much. I mean, it's almost identical syntax. A lot of people that I really respect love Crystal, and that's fine. And that's it's a language. It's an edge language. I don't see it. Maybe perhaps if WASM WebAssembly comes off the ground, maybe Crystal will become something again, and people could write WebAssembly in Crystal. I'm still really, really, really skeptical of WebAssembly. I think WebAssembly could unfortunately end up being the next Flash if it's not done right. And I think it's going to open up an opportunity for a really serious browser war. And we're learning from the progressive web apps and the people dragging their feet like Safari and stuff on it, that the browser people still can't get into agreement about what they're going to do. So I think the WebAssembly landscape is still pretty scary. Personally, I'm not as confident as I was before. I was actually more confident about it until I've seen it now. And so, there's a lot of Rust people that are investing time in Rust because they think that WebAssembly is going to equalize all that. TJ Hollowaychuk, who I strongly respect, is, also it doesn't matter anymore because WebAssembly is going to level the playing field. And I don't know. That's a very scary future. We're going to start to see people writing blogs in WebAssembly that are completely and totally impossible to share, and against the MIT motto, which is to share and disseminate knowledge, right? And so many things are coming out of the technology world that are specifically inhibiting the sharing of knowledge, and one of them could be the next Flash. So Scheme, I think Scheme's cool. I think Scheme is a cool language and you should learn it. I don't think it's got any practical application anywhere. I'm a very practical guy. I only want to learn languages that are going to get me somewhere. And unless you're going to learn Scheme and eLisp and you're going to be writing, modules for Emacs or something, I've learned a little bit of Scheme. TCL is kind of like Scheme. And so, expect is written in that. I learned stuff because I want to get stuff done. And the languages that are languages that where the rubber hits the road and people are actually getting work done with those languages are the ones that I mentioned. And everything else is, including Java, by the way, I forgot to mention Java. Java and C# are languages that people are getting crazy gobs of stuff done, and they're not going to go anywhere as long as Android is still a thing. Kotlin, Swift, all of those languages, they have very specific purpose, and they're Crystal doesn't have a purpose. It's a beautiful language without a purpose. Julia, another really great language that's been kind of overshadowed by, other more significant languages. So yeah. Here's a question. This is a fun one. What do you think of Copilot? So Copilot has been all over the news today, this week, from GitHub and Microsoft. I think I have mixed feelings about Copilot, to tell you the truth. I think that on some sense, the world is moving toward what I think eventually we'll be doing, which is we'll be speaking what we want in kind of a Tony Stark way. We'll be telling, I thought it was funny. I was watching, Tony Stark and the gang, and they're, he's always got code flashing on his screen and everything. I know he's a fictional character, right? But I believe like someday in the future, we're going to see, whenever we see code streaming across the screen, we're going to think that's cute. kind of like transporter, kind of like communicators in Star Trek. Like we look back and look at the communicators in Star Trek, even though they had killer range, right? They could go all the way off the planet, but the technology, like flipping the thing and the thing, you're like, oh my God, And I think honestly, I'm a little bit of a futurist on this particular point. But I think that one day we're gonna look back at written code with a fond, nostalgic affinity because code will no longer be written. The way machine learning is going, the future is probably going to be a bunch of models that are composed of other models, conglomerates of models that can respond to natural language and to policies. And Copilot is a window into what that's going to look like. Now, Windows still turns it into, I don't know. I haven't learned Lisp yet, so. Yeah, but if you're gonna learn Lisp and you're gonna buy into that whole thing, I would learn eLisp so you can buy into the Emacs world. Even though I totally strongly regard Emacs as a rabbit hole that you do not want to go down unless you're going to be in front of the same computer all day every day working on code bases that have millions of lines of code. Or I just don't think you need it. Clojure's got lots of practical applications being used all over, right? So anyway, I think it's kind of cool. Do I want to have functions that are a full sentence? Do I have to want to type those in every time? No. And then did you see the other security people and the copyright people asking questions like, who owns this code? That's a super interesting one. Let me ask you people a question. What do you think? What do you think? Who owns the code when you speak and a machine learning model decides what code to be written and it puts the code there and you decide to keep it without modifying it? Do you own that code? Yes or no? There's a good vote. That's a good debate topic. Rust plus NeoVim is where I spend my time. I feel so sorry for you. Tell me, do you do that professionally? Are you paid for it, or you just like it? I have yet to find anybody who's paid to use NeoVim and Rust. You can love it, that's fine, but are you actually doing anything with it? There's a lot of people who love Rust and NeoVim, and every time I ask them, they don't do actually anything with it. I'm like, okay, show me one significant project that has Rust in it. They can never name them. There's nothing. There's really nothing out there. They always pull out the Discord project, which is not even a thing anymore. Copilot, Alacrity. Yeah, okay. Well, I had to throw Alacrity out. I started really loving it, but it's too buggy and It's too buggy and failure for me to love anymore. I had to give it up. Alacrity is not a major project. Alacrity is really fast and full of bugs and not even compliant with the ANSI standard and doesn't have a 1.0 release. And that's what you got. That's your best project. That's what you're going to put out there as your best project. Let's do the same for Go. I don't know. Let's start with Docker. Should we start there? How about CoreOS? How about Kubernetes? How about Helm and Terraform? No. Stub Trade is written in Rust, right? Polkadot. I've never heard of these projects, so I'm suspecting that they're not as significant as people would like them to be. I've heard of Kubernetes, though. Pretty important project. It's always the same. What happened to yours? Oh, I've talked about that so many times. But are you officially asking that as a question? Because we're almost done with questions. No, why would you use Kitty? You guys just don't get it. It's fine. It's fine. I love you. You just don't get it. It's gonna be almost impossible for me to tell you why. You tell me. Okay, it's not up to me to justify why I don't use Alacrity and Kitty. It's up to you to justify to me why I should throw away the default that's been there for decades. And this is a very conservative position. I realize this, but it's up to you to prove to me why I should throw. Alacrity is really fast, and it is. It's fast, and I did a lot of positive videos on it. You can go watch them. And then I used it on Windows, and I used it in another couple of places, and I got burned, and it was like death by 1,000 cuts. All these little things that it didn't do, and then all these seriously bad things that it does when you get a notification in full screen Windows with it. And I was like, bye-bye. And even Windows Terminal is better at that point. So, why do I use Kitty? I don't use Kitty. Why would I use Kitty? I don't need it. Why? How come so many people are spending so much time running around using the things that come with the system by default? I mean, you know what I'm saying? If it does the job, you have to justify what it's bringing new to the table. It's like NeoVim. NeoVim brings nothing new to the table that matters. It brings a lot of new stuff to the table, but none of it matters. None of it matters. Of course, the web development course, I think I've approximately. Oh boy, that's a question. Let's answer that one, and then we'll be back on our. That's a very good one. So that's why. Versus approximately, I think the web is more. It's more reachable in terms of getting better paid jobs, but I want to understand Linux administration as well. I don't know where you're getting your data. That is so incorrect from where I'm sitting. The average infrastructure engineer right now, you know what? I can see where you maybe got that. Do you know where the money is that blows both of those away? It's what I'm doing right now, and I did not even realize this. Anything they cannot find qualified cloud native infrastructure engineers right now, and that is all Linux containers and Kubernetes. And we're not talking about just DevOps. We're talking about being able to do system administration and cloud native. If you add cloud native plus system administration SRE skills combined like that, you will blow the doors off anything a web developer will make. The starting salaries are $120K. Starting. So if you could get that experience, people, it is really great. They cannot find people who have this level of skill. They can't find anybody who knows Kubernetes, and yet Kubernetes is growing. Oh God, you just would not believe the numbers. It's being adopted by the enterprise so freaking fast, and they cannot find anybody who knows it. They're so desperate. Everybody's so desperate. This came out in a Bloomberg thing. I think it was this week. It was one of my notifications. I'm telling you, so it's really about what you like. If you're trying to go where the money and the jobs are, that's a different priority. If you're trying to go, obviously there used to be a lot of web jobs. I happen to think that there's not as many web development jobs as people might think. I think, and certainly I make yourself a senior. I believe that too. I don't think you should go for any junior jobs. I don't. And I just saw somebody on Twitter the other day. She said, she spent like a year and a half trying to get a job as a junior engineer. And within 6 months of being on the job as a junior engineer, she's getting offers and recruiters calling her every day. And she can't get rid of them to jump ship because now she has experience. And so part of the problem is that you're the perception that you're a junior engineer. You just need to get experience, even if it's on an open source project or whatever you're going to do, and do that. So yeah. I think that they're, having been in the industry now and in a very conservative company that pays very well, I can tell you that there are a lot of unfilled jobs in the Linux operations space that are not SREs, and they're not DevOps people. They're more. And this particular company has decided to call it an infrastructure engineer, which means that you know all the stuff of a system administrator. Generally, you know how to put computers together and start up VMs and debug them, and networking and stuff like that. But you also know Kubernetes on top of that. And even better, if you can actually debug and write Kubernetes applications, which is what they have me doing. They have me actually not creating a Kubernetes application and managing a Kubernetes application in that space. But I think certified Kubernetes application developer, whether or not you get the certification or not, that particular skill set is going to launch you. Oh my God. It is like, because everybody is doing it. All of the big companies are either planning or have already started migrating their core applications into Kubernetes Cloud, and they need to know how to do this, and they don't have any idea how to do it. And so so you got to learn Docker. Oh my God, I have never ever received so much overwhelming proof that you must know Docker. You've got to know Docker inside and out, know all the Docker files. In fact, we're going to do a whole Docker file thing as a part of the boost, because I once I thought, well, maybe this isn't an essential for any beginner. And oh my God, it's like, even if you think you're just going to be a web developer and you're never going to do anything, if you don't know how to make a container and you can't talk the container speak, forget it. It's all containers. I mean, that war is already passed. It's already passed. I mean, there's still some old, holdouts like trying to, like the Empire in Mandalorian, like trying to fight against the cloud wave that just took over when the rebels won. And whether you like it or not, Kubernetes is here to stay, and that fundamentally includes Docker. And if you don't know how to make a Docker container and host it yourself and why you would do that, learn that now. Learn that now. And I didn't. I waited a little bit too long. I'd been following Docker since 2013, but I hadn't really done the effort to go do it because I was running my own business, didn't need containers, at least I thought. And now I absolutely realize how much I needed to learn about that. Should I learn? I haven't heard of any of these programs. You're talking about more Rust stuff that no one's ever heard of? We should take a poll. How many of you have heard of Redux? Yeah, CoreOS, K3OS. There's at least two. That's cool. What is Redux? I'm sorry. I just laugh. I think it's funny. I think Rust developers and the Rust community is trying so hard to be significant, and they just don't matter. They just don't. They don't. I mean, I tried to give them benefit of that. I watched the Cloud Native presentation where they were going to say Rust is a great new container-based from scratch language, and I was like, oh my God, no, this is so cringy. It was like so cringy. I'm sorry. I just have to laugh because it's just so silly to me. And people are staking their whole lives and careers on this, and I'm like, okay, fine. I'm at this point, I'm just laughing because it's just so sad. When you come to me with a Rust application that's going to convince me that Rust matters, it has to be on par with Docker. Okay? And there's nothing because it takes so long to write anything in Rust. Docker, I mean, whether or not it's the safest language or what, but nobody's writing anything in it. So you just build a robotic operating system without any hassle. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and so let's see, should I learn web development or Linux operations? And I think the answer is both to that. We're 10 minutes over. Actually, we still have some time. 7 o'clock is the beginning of the boost, so I'll be dropping here in a couple of minutes. What's a good resource for learning Kubernetes? I don't know. If you find some good ones, let me know. I have been doing the Kubernetes stuff. So Philippe asked a question about certification. I can answer that one fast. On YouTube, he says, Nauman says, what terminal do I use? I use whatever terminal I have on the system. That's it. I'm using Pop! OS because I don't waste my time with that stuff. There's too many other things to lose time on. It's all in my FAQ too, if you want to go look at it on my GitHub. If you go click through it, it'll get you the FAQ. What terminal do you use? It's like whatever I can find. And I just have to use tmux with it, right? Are certificates necessary to get started working in this industry? No. So absolutely not. Are certificates necessary to get started? No. And I'm going to give you a quick answer to that. I don't mean to put you off, Philippe, but I strongly encourage anybody who's asking the question about certificates, and that goes for me. I have to revisit this question all the time for myself. There's a video I made. It's an hour long. I made a graphic for it and everything called Why Certify. And go watch it. It talks about the pros and cons of certification. There are some things that require certification. Rust is a great candidate for what? No, he's totally changed his mind since then. Not fair. You're talking about drivers? No. I have a whole video on that. Go watch Rust Reality and go watch the actual thing that he said before you start quoting Torvalds. Yeah, you can say Rust rules all you want, but show me one place where that's true. The only thing Rust rules is in loudmouth people who love to say Rust is awesome. There's nothing substantial being made in it at all. And there won't ever be. And all these people that are investing all this time in it, that's fine. Just more time for us to get a job. I think it was attempting to be nice for Torvalds. I really do. He's like, that entire article is him saying why there's no better language than C. And he makes one tiny little contextual reference to Rust saying, well, maybe we should open up to other languages. Rust is a potentially good candidate there, maybe. But C is the best language for this kind of work, and it always will be. That's his statement. And these Rustafarians are like happily saying all of this crap about how Torvalds is going to let Rust into the kernel. Hell no. Hell no. Oh, I just think it's funny. It's funny because people are building their own business models on it, and they're going to crash and burn and fail, and I'm going to laugh. I'm going to laugh because I've been saying it. I've been trying to warn people all this time, but they don't care. They just do not care what I have to say. So what's a good resource to learn Kubernetes? Why do I think it's bad? I've already talked about that over and many, many, many times. I read a whole video on it. It doesn't do anything significant. Why do you think it's good? You got to tell me why it's better than the standard languages. Go is the standard cloud native language, hands down. What is Rust good at? Oh, it's really safe. It has a good memory pointer. Not if you're doing embedded and you have to turn it all off with unsafe. Look, I don't want to slam. I want us to stay positive. So safe and C-level performance. Yeah, that's a total lie. If you actually go watch the video and read the paper from the PhDs who put a paper countering that argument and saying that Rust is not safe and it does not have C-level performance in most cases. And if it does have C-level performance, it's because you've turned unsafe on, therefore defeating your first claim. Rust's claims are lies. They're open, bald-faced marketing lies that the people who join the Rust cult have bought into, and they're going to continue to preach this stuff and get you to believe it. But the people who actually matter are the PhDs and people writing academic papers, taking it down for the problem it is, and all the other people who've been working on the Linux kernel since the dawn of time who are doing it in C and C++, and the gaming community that's like, no. C++ is just fine. Those are the people that are coming coming out of the woodwork to actually write the reality about Rust. And thank God they are, because they've been getting so busy getting work done instead of marketing their language that we're now finally starting to hear about them, because this over-marketed crap is getting out there and it's starting to get legs in other places where it shouldn't. I didn't say C++ for the kernel. I said for game development. The speech is full of passion and opinion that's based on, it's a very, very strong opinion, and it's based on lots and lots of objective stuff. Everybody loves to say, well, you haven't written one single thing in Rust. And I say, yeah, and I never will. Because it's crap. It's absolute crap. So why does this always have to be a Rust thing? Everybody always brings me back to Rust every time. It is absolute crap. Yeah. Yeah. Don't know, Rob. Don't buy it. Don't buy what crap? See, a bit old, but what are your thoughts about the Discord rewrote the source from Rust? I am so tired of hearing about that. First of all, it's not even accurate. Okay? It doesn't even reflect their current position. All right? So, okay, I have two things to say about this, and I'm going to answer this because it's like, what do you think about the Discord Rust blog? All right, my first response to that is, if you're choosing your IT infrastructure based on what Discord is doing, you have a problem. I mean, a serious problem with your decision-making capabilities. If you are getting your IT infrastructure direction from Reddit, you have a problem. If you're listening to this crap that's going through it, and you're not even doing the due diligence to find out if it wasn't even a fucking case study. It was a random blog somebody made about something that they're kind of doing, in which case they actually left most of Rust and went to Erlang, which makes a lot of sense. So you can't keep giving me this stuff about the Discord blog because you haven't done any other research. If you actually want a real picture of what Rust is being used for in the industry, present multiple case studies that show where it's being used, as you can find on go.dev right now, that will tell you industry and company and Fortune 500 company after another that have done formal case studies documenting how that language has transformed their IT internally. And that includes stuff that's happened originally at Discord and at Dropbox and other places like that. But not only that, if you're looking at one of these like popular marketing based like Discordy, Spotify, Lyft, if you're looking for them for your IT infrastructure decisions because they know how to market really well, you're making a lot of really major problems for your company because you're following the trends that aren't even based in reality. If you want to do that, look at the academic papers on it, like the one that just came out against Rust, or go to, even Gartner Group, which is, pandering to everybody to get money. They still have a more objective view on these decisions. And you know what's funny? Because the people who are making the IT decisions for these companies are doing this research because it's their job. The rest of us are all reading the popular Reddit posts or the freaking, hacker news of the day about what they should choose to do with their life and how they should invest their skills. Meanwhile, everybody who's getting their work done every day isn't posting to these things, and they're quietly being ignored. So when the most beloved language, according to a Stack Exchange survey of web script kiddies, comes out and says Rust is the most popular language, all of the blogs take that and run with it because it sells really well. But it's the biggest marketing hype in the world, and there's not a single substantial project in Rust at all. And everybody keeps trying to throw stuff at me, and there's never anything. Discord has a lot of Rust, actually, right? Discord that explains a lot, actually. Another reason never to work at Discord. Oh my God, that company, I used to think it was a really great company, and then I started looking at their internals and reading some of their blogs and stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I am never sending any of my professionals to work there. Never in a million years. It will ruin you for life. I don't want anybody to work there ever. Oh my God. I'm not so much a fan of Slack, but Slack is way more professional than Discord. So the Rust off and the electrons will go faster. Yeah. People have a selection confirmation bias when they mention the Discord blog post. So they don't remember or mention the case that supports what they want to believe in. Rust is superior to go for performance critical software, large enterprise. Capitalist fanboy, that's very well said. And the thing is funny is this is the one that they keep pulling out. Now there's a good one. Dumb, what's this one about? Let's go look at this one. If you have contrary information to me, present it to me and I will change my mind. I will change my mind when presented with information. Strong opinions weakly held. Have you had it? Rust is the most promising and most loved languages out there, according to... Why do people keep citing this from Stack Overflow? Let me ask you a question about this. To all the people out there, okay? Who do you think answers Stack Overflow surveys? Do you think there's a lot of embedded C engineers spending 1 fucking second on Stack Overflow? No. How about all of the C++ game developers? Are they answering Stack Overflow surveys? Most of the people, how about everybody in the IT industry? How about IT Sec? How many seconds do they spend on Stack Overflow? They might go there and because the hits keep coming up and they like read the third answer down, but otherwise they hate Stack Overflow because it's the thing that keeps coming up. There are so many people who are so much more reliable. It's a website with a bunch of people. It's not. It's web people. It's mostly web people, and it's true that Rust is the most popular language among previous Node script kiddies. And if you look at the governance committee, half of them came from the Node project. Rust is Node in disguise. Most of its culture, most of the people that are running it, they're like, oh, we got a real language there. Let's go play with this. And even though their whole team got fired from Firefox at Mozilla, it doesn't matter. People love to just keep chancing this out. So when you start with your first line, switch back, they're back in Python to go. Yes. Small companies are doing that. I'm angry because I keep getting the same crap. And it's always based on the same thing. The next time anybody ever says to me, why are you against the most beloved programming language out there? I'm going to say, check your confirmation bias. Where are you getting your information from? And so when I read a blog post that starts with the most beloved programming language out there, according to a survey of a bunch of web developers who have too much time on their hands because they're not doing anything fucking significant. And so they're able to answer a question saying, oh, I want Rust to win. I want Rust to do WebAssembly. And so they spend all this time answering these things. And now they have swayed the popular opinion on this language way, way, way above where it should be because it's not actually doing anything. There's no significant work being done with it. So I get angry. Because the reality is that it's not that. And then people are making business decisions. It took me 6 months to get one of the guys helped him on a $100K job as a junior engineer. And it took me 6 months and very patiently to get him to stop coding in Rust so he could get a job. And he, of his own accord, said, I really need to learn Go along with this Rust stuff so I can actually get a job. He learned Go. He had a job within 2 months. And he had Rust that showed that he could do some of the stuff in Rust, that he was willing to think outside the box and stuff. But if you want a job, learn Go. If you want to be popular with Node people, former Node people, learn Rust. I'm just tired of it because the false perception out there is hurting people. It's hurting good engineers who are making shitty decisions and they're killing their careers over this. And my job, and I took my own retirement money out early to help people get jobs and stuff. And so when I run into this mythology, it really angers me because it's actually hurting America in particular, our ability to land these jobs. Java is an amazing language. Java is a workhorse language that I hate, but it will get you a job. I'm a Node person and I don't want Rust. I want the job and the money. How is that the name of the language you told? I don't know. Here's a guy on Twitter that says that we should normalize blocking help sites like Stack Overflow because if you don't know the basic stuff like DNS config, that's bad. I think he's a fan. Yeah. I don't know. Big Jim, I might agree with that. I might agree with that. Look, okay, I'm going to pull myself back here and I'm just going to ask you something. Okay. So this is not about Rust. This is about the lack of critical thinking and the lack of critical analysis skills in the population at large, particularly among beginners. This is what makes me angry and frustrated because honestly, I know you think I'm just yelling at people that are at Rust. I am not. It's not so much about hating and making fun of Rust. It is that. I have fun with that. But that's not what I'm here for. The reason I'm getting so passionate and angry like this is because I actually, deep in my heart, you won't believe me, you think I'm full of shit, but I have nightmares about beginners not having a solid foundation. And so when I when I see so much time and effort being wasted on what's the best Linux distro, how come Rust is better than all these other languages, and which language should I learn first even? When I hear and I see all the false information and the false influence that's being exerted by, in particularly Rust at this moment, when I see these things happen, a lot of it harkens back to Java. Now, you guys were slamming on Java. I lived through the $500,000 Java marketing campaign from Sun Microsystems in the 90s. And everybody thought Java network devices running Sun Microsystems miniature of Java OS was going to be the world thing. It was everywhere. They were showing them to everybody. Everyone was all about object-oriented programming, like strict inheritance, class-based object-oriented programming. And Sun Microsystems was dumping money into Java. It was the most marketed language in history. And so let's take a moment here. We all agree that Java is not a very good language. I mean, nobody would choose to write in Java, but they know that it's there. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this Java historical story up for you is because I am terrified that that same thing is going to happen again. That the world is going to have so much artificially inflated value in a particular thing, whether it be Rust or NeoVim, and that's going to become adopted. It's going to change the new normal in a negative way, and we are going to be left holding the bag, and we are. You guys don't like Java, right? Java had the same marketing hype around it that Rust has had. Java had enormous marketing hype. It had nothing to show for it. Nothing to really show for it, but it had enormous marketing hype. It turned out to be one of the industry's biggest mistakes, but it was so embedded into all of our systems at banking level, and it got all the CTOs and everybody to buy into it, and I bought into it. We all bought into it. And so because we bought into that, we are now faced with a massive legacy of Java code. And so what we have to do now is, and so the reason that I am so bent out of shape about Rust and actively campaigning against it is because if Rust becomes the new normal, we are fucked. And we are fucked with a capital F, all caps, because it will screw developer productivity, compile times. Go was made because they had to wait for a day and a half for C to finish compiling within Google. And then Rust goes and says, we're going to double or triple compilation times from C because it's safer. There are so many considerations about this language in terms of productivity and what you have to work with every day that the fact that Rust is even getting this much attention scares the shit out of me because of how bad it is. And thank God a lot of other people are finally waking up to this. It is a horrible language for embedded programming. C is still way better. And there are many, every single time somebody like overly gets the popularity, what ends up happening is that when nobody can find any actual coders in these other languages, in C, for example, we still need a lot of C coders. C++, we still need a lot of C++ programmers. And I personally have been kind of anti-C++, but this whole fiasco is causing me to look at C++ with fresh eyes because it will destroy Rust in performance every time. Every time. This is why they don't mess around with that when they're doing graphics development, stuff like that. They use C++ for that. So, okay. Don't listen to them, guys. Learn Rust if you want to make your own opinion on it. Absolutely make your own opinion on it. It has a large learning hit, but when you learn it, it's worth it. Why is it worth it, though? This is the thing. Every time a Rustafarian or somebody like that tells you things like that, which I'm not silencing, by the way. I want to have discerning opinions. But every time somebody says, you're going to love it, it's great, it's awesome, they can never tell you why. What is it going to get me? What is it going to get me? What am I going to be able to make with it? It doesn't use the LVM anymore. I don't think it uses it anymore. But execution, yeah, but C++ execution in C time is still faster than Rust. So learn C and C++ properly. I mean, you got to go watch the first video in the Rust Reality. It's hilarious. It's like we're having problems with memory things that we already know how we've addressed, and we've already taken care of them, and we know how to take care of them. But let's fix them by rewriting our entire code base in a new language. Well, what do you want to get from it? Exactly. I want to be a full stack dev. You should pick C++ to understand underlying structures better. No, C. if you want to be full stack, then I would. I don't know. Are you talking about object-oriented programming coding still? But security ain't to be fixed on C. Oh, it already has been fixed. Have you coded any C? When's the last time you did any security checks? Dude, look, if you really want to understand this, instead of listening to some random person repeat the choir's chant, actually go read the papers about the security. Go read the hundreds of CVEs open against Rust cargoes because they're unsafe. Go read all the code that's been written that's broken in Rust already after however many years we've been doing it. But you won't because you're a cultist, just like everybody else. And I went into Rust with an open mind, and I started looking at all these different things, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so terrified of this entire community. Even if there was a glaring hole in this thing, they would never bring it up because they're cultists. They're like Rust cult. I have never met ever, and it makes sense too, because the Node community like this before, they were very culty. The Node people tend to be very culty, and the Rust people are even worse. And the Go people are like, meh, I know it's an unsexy language, but it gets work done. And they're like doing some C embedded project on the side, or they're like poking around with Crystal, or maybe they're playing around with Rust just to see what it's about, but they're not doing anything significant with those things. They're just experimenting because that's what they do. They look at different software out there and experiment with it, but they get stuff done in JavaScript, Python, and Go, because that's what the whole world runs, and Java and C#, of course. So that's what they're getting stuff done on. Algorithms of C. Yeah, my favorite C book is right now is I was showing you guys the other day, Mastering Algorithms in C. It's a different one. It's an O'Reilly book. You can go look at that. When I think of the OpenCV library, I haven't looked into that enough. I don't have a strong opinion on that yet. I think it's where we're headed, though. I think this is where we're headed. I do. I think we're going to start seeing more and more libraries pop up that are the results of tons and tons of processing over many years. The models are going to become so more advanced, and I think that the Copilot stuff is eventually going to turn into something like that. We're going to start to see that. Yes, I have a Twitch, Ramiro. So yeah. So college, I'll tell you about the jobs in a year or so if I'm interested in the debate. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. So yeah. I mean, thank God you even know about it. I mean, DB, let me just say, I'm glad that you're thinking about Rust and you're looking at it in college. A lot of people aren't, right? A lot of people in college aren't even looking at other languages, and they're not learning anything. They're learning really great things, but none of them are related to what they're going to actually do to get a job. And there are some companies that are, I mean, most colleges are still teaching you Java for things. And so, yeah. Yeah, I think it's probably good to cut it off. And, Every time we do this, I go through the same frustration because I get so passionate because I get the same questions over and over again. You're also in college and you're super grateful. Oh, well, you know what? And it's not just me, right? I encourage you to, as everybody has said, including Rustafarian, who obviously likes Rust. So I always laugh at people who put programming languages in their names. And I'm Rastafarian, I'm just poking fun. If your identity is so fully tied up with a specific language, reassess your life choices, because people don't hire you for one language. They hire polyglot programmers. They don't hire you for one language. They hire you because you're able to adapt to the languages and the advantages, and you're able to use the new tools as they come out. As soon as there's a Hydro Spanner one day, you're going to need to learn the Hydro Spanner, and you're going to need to know why to use the Hydro Spanner. And I will be here just as loudly and passionately if and when Rust finds its way, and it finds an actual killer app that it's really, really good at, that it actually has delivered to the world that we care about. There's nothing right now. Firefox doesn't count. It's like a footnote. I use it all the time, but it's a footnote in terms of like actual applications that matter. And, I don't know. Did you learn C Basics, Reardon? That's cool. Mathematically, I love Haskell. We talked about Haskell at the beginning of the stream, and I think that mathematically based, I think everybody should learn one eventually. In fact, I think of all the languages that are kind of off the beaten path, I would think Haskell or Lisp or one of the purely functional, mathematically functional languages, even Clojure or something like that. I think that it could really benefit you as a young developer. I think learning a functional, people that get in, schema and Lisp people, they tend to be all or nothing on functional, right? It's like only functional, that's the only way to go. But there are some really solid times when functional programming, like if you really, I talked about this earlier, but if you open up Haskell, open up Pandoc, the source doc to Pandoc, and see how Haskell converts every single document into an AST, an abstract syntax tree using Haskell. It's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's a really, really amazing programming learning experience to see how they do it, because they manage this massive code base that's able to translate, dozens of different, formats for stuff, and they're able to manage it very cleanly and nicely because they take it all to a common AST, and then they convert that AST into other things, and you'll glean what, you have to overcome what a monad is. Yeah. I want to learn Python. What do you mean? I know the basics, but I'm just stuck at this point. If I want to learn something more, I look you up on YouTube and they type the code without explaining why, and it does. Can you help me? That would be great. Nightwand, can I suggest the beginner boost for you if you want? That's the best I can do. I've spent a lot of time preparing the beginner boost. We're supposedly on day, we're kind of into that time. I think I'm gonna have to cancel it today because we have a lot of people here for a conversation. So maybe we'll just have a Friday night conversation and I'll do the boost tomorrow. But I've been doing, so if you go back to look at the boost, you look in the about of this section here, you can go back and look at that. I'm not marketing it or anything. It's all free, of course. It's just, that's my best way to answer the question for you about what you should learn and why. Okay. And that will build up. It progressively builds up with learning how to learn and then go from there. Right. And we learn shell scripting first, and then we're going to eventually learn other stuff. What's your opinion on leak questions for interviews? I hate them. I hate them. Actually, they're like a necessary evil, but I hate them. It depends on what you're going for. I will never do an interview with a LeetCode question, ever. Because, first of all, I don't like the culture of those people in those positions. I would hackers are so much more fun to work with. And they never give you LeetCode questions. That's just, you asked me my personal opinion, and that's what I'm telling you. Any interviewer who's going to give me a LeetCode question in the interview because they're too lazy to actually look at my work or anything like that is not gonna fly with me. I'm going to say something. This is going to get me in all kinds of trouble. I don't care. Hackers and operations people are way more fun to work with, and prima donna software engineers and computer scientists are some of the most boring. I'm going to get in so much trouble. I don't want to work with them. Hey, do you guys know about Dinesh and Guilfoyle? That's what I'm talking about right there. That is so true. And my own life experience has confirmed that. I've worked on software teams, and it was, in my case, the people were really great, but I just did not want to be with them anytime. So, and hacker mentality, even if you do a DevOps job, hacker mentality, learning how to learn and figuring things out and stuff like that is going to make you a much more fun person. Operations people are hilarious. Every time I've ever been at the operations team, they've been some of the tightest teams ever. And you know why? Because we're constantly putting out fires. We're literally falling asleep, snoring on the phone with each other. I just shared that story. We had an emergency call 2 days ago, and we had an emergency call, and it was a low point in the call. And I said, you know what? One of these calls, I had somebody fall asleep once, and everybody else shared their story from all across the land about them also having someone fall asleep. And there's one team in his former role. You have one too, right? They had to shut the call down and start a new call because the snoring was so loud. This doesn't happen in software engineering and development. Software development, they like cage you in a corner, even if you're doing game development, which seems like exciting at first, right? They cage you in a corner, lock you up. They literally do. And when I was at Nike, they literally tape you in your cubicle, bring you food, and make a joke about how you shouldn't look up from the keyboard because you need to make more code, and it's all about the love of coding. And I really, really love the code, but I don't love that much coding, So for me, operations has that. And this stemmed from the question about LeetCode. If you're going to stick a LeetCode question in front of me and ask me to finish it in a certain number of time and talk about what I'm doing while I'm doing it, and that's your only decision about whether you're going to hire me or not, I don't want anything to do with your company. Your company has just proven to me how insignificant it is in its actual practices and its actual caring about human beings. And I know that because I got this job today as an infrastructure engineering doing Kubernetes. And in my interview, I answered nothing in the elite question thing. They looked at my CV, they looked at my projects. They asked me point blank, how's your Kubernetes? I said, I don't know it at all. And I still got the job. And I was given time to learn it because they saw my potential to be able to learn it based on my experience. They asked me to describe a time while I was on an operations call. They asked me to talk about my experience. They asked me to explain things. They asked me to, talk through problems and things like that. But they didn't give me any front of the whiteboard, high pressure stuff. And I respected that immediately. And it was like the second job I interviewed for, and I immediately took it. So I'm just telling you, just be careful because you are in the driver's seat. Make yourself a senior. I believe this. You think you're a junior, but make yourself a senior. See, Nick, make yourself a senior. Make yourself a senior in something. Do whatever it takes. Write your own code. Write your own application. They use Rust, but they just do that because they want to appeal to all the people who think they like Rust. Microsoft, Google, and Amazon use Rust. Where? Oh, God. Where? Show me something they've made with it that matters. You can't. Haskell, I think Haskell is more important to learn than Rust. I say Rust always comes back. Literally on that article, they cite the companies. I know. They cite the companies, but they don't say what they're doing. Can we follow the topics? Yes. Let's stay on the LeetCode thing. Mostly FANG companies give you those kinds of questions for interviews. Yes, they do. And you can actually avoid them. I still think you need to prepare for them. Gail has this book here. I'm going to show you something. I do not endorse this book. Okay. You can't see it because it's green. It's a green book. It's called Cracking the Coding Interview. And there's a new one that comes out every year that you have to buy in print that doesn't have a Kindle because she's money grubbing, whatever. But I just say that because I do what I do for free and maybe it doesn't have the same amount of value. That's fine. If you're going to get that, yeah. We should get it. Haskell, I think Haskell is awesome. I'm not going to say Haskell has white space significance, so Python people will love that. I don't particularly like that. I personally, no qualms on this. There is more important applications done in Haskell right now than there are in Rust. And a lot of people are using Haskell and Erlang. What they're really waking up to is performance. And, Erlang is hands down like the fast that language is used in phone switches and crap. So Elixir and Erlang are some of the languages that I really, really, really want to learn. Haskell is another one that I would look. If I were 6 years younger, I would think cracking the coding interview would mean walking into a room full of HR senior coders and dropping a bag of Coke. Sorry. Coding still, that's kind of funny and bad. You're bad. Pandoc is way more useful than what's written in Rust. Right. So the reason this is not banging on Rust. I'm legitimately telling you, if you want to see code, understanding how monads work, which I still don't, but understanding the purely functional approach of Haskell, at least in the sense of like parsing data as it comes in, which is what I did study because I wanted to port Pandoc to go. using Elixir, right? Yeah, I know they are. That's what they talked about in their blog. They talked about leaving Rust for Elixir. They have Rust pieces in there. Yeah, they have. Look, any company that has that much mixture of languages all over in the place, it depends on where they're being used, right? If it's being used for the right purpose, stuff. Yeah, Rust is mainly C and Haskell. It is a perfect match. Yeah. Okay. Well, you could use C and Haskell, which have already been around for a lot longer, have a much bigger user base and are more stable. Elixir is dynamically typed. It is. That is a problem. Some people would say that it's not a problem, but we have a new person who just started listening and watching who is a big Elixir fan, and I really like. I want to learn. I still have a goal to really, really, truly understand monads. I know that sounds weird, but yeah. Did you know Python? Python is actually closer. That Python is a real weird one. I learned way too late in my Python career coding in Python. Did you know Python is lazy evaluated? I did not know that. I wonder if they've changed that. Yeah, Python is lazy evaluated. I was like looking at comprehensions and stuff and purely functional notation for things that you can do in Python. And that was when somebody told me that Python comprehensions are lazy evaluated like in Haskell or another functional language. And if you don't know what lazy evaluation is, you won't appreciate this, but it's super important to have lazy evaluation if you're going to be purely functional, because otherwise you got stuff getting copied over in memory like crazy and you can't. So like, you know what I'm saying? Generators are lazy. Yeah, I didn't know that. That was one of the things I learned very late in my Python, and actually that improved my perception of generators and any of the generators and comprehensions and stuff like that. Because otherwise, I mean, if you go into it thinking like a C programmer who's transferring memory all around the place, there's another reason I really like Go is because slices are an abstraction on top of memory and arrays. So there's nothing at maps and slices, which are arrays, right, are abstractions on top of the memory. So there's no memory flying around. It's just all pass by pointer stuff. So you don't lose the performance you would. And some of these purely functional language, if you have a purely functional language and you're not doing lazy evaluation, just forget it, right? And if you're trying to write code in C that's doing pure, immutable stuff, then you could be in big trouble, because is Rust. I imagine Rust must be lazy evaluated at some point as well. Keep my eyes open. Yeah. Best research for learning category theory. In the Haskell. Ooh, look at you. Thank you, capitalist fanboy. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go read that. That sounds really cool. Yeah. Category theory for programmers, unofficial PDF and LaTeX source. Is it LaTeX? I've been saying LaTeX for a long time, and I heard DistroTube say LaTeX the other day, and I was like, what? I think I've never once heard it said that way. We have to go see how what's his face? God, what's his name? Is it LaTeX? You're sure? We've had so many fights on this stream about how to pronounce that. He also has a YouTube class. Yeah, does he really? This is super cool. I'll have to go look at it. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of this kind of thing. Theory, categorical theory, PDFs. This looks interesting. Scala edition. Nix, a Nix package. Yay, Nix. I'm actually intrigued by Nix. Nix is, the more I look at it, the more it intrigues me. That's all I'm going to say. Latex, like the material. Yeah. Well, you get yelled at for that all the time. Yeah. I've been corrected before and said, no, it's latex. And I've never once had anybody tell me it was LaTeX ever. And I've been talking to people about it since the mid-90s. So I think the internet has actually ruined us all on this, because now we can actually go. What's his name? I forget his name. It's the guy who made it, he's like, Donald Knuth. Yeah, Donald Knuth, who's an amazing human being. Yeah, it created tech. Yeah, I'd love to get Donald Knuth on the stream and see what he has to say. Formatty, textbooky script thingy. Yeah, I mean, I really like it. I do like it. It's really great. I just don't ever write anything in it these days. Because Pandoc, particularly Pandoc officially supports LaTeX inside of Pandoc. And that's actually something that I'm trying to build common ground here that DistroTube actually and I really agree on. And I was actually, one of the things I was impressed about Emacs uses Pandoc for all of its documentation. So org mode is using Pandoc to do all of its conversion from org mode into other stuff, but I think you should just use Markdown in the first place. Otherwise, why would you learn some one-off if we're going to talk about org mode? I love R Markdown. Oh yeah, R Markdown all by itself. So I was actually I was writing my own Markdown parser, actually. That's where I got into LaTeX. It's where I made Pagan, so I could do my own parsing, develop my own grammar, by the way. A little plug for that. If you want to go read about this, you can go read it, pagan.dev. Quint and I mostly worked on this, and you can go read more about this. Actually, they have a mailing list. I just posted some stuff to the mailing list. And of course you would ask that, DB. Oh, God. No, it's not. No. Not only is it not POSIX compliant, it's dangerous. If you really care, go do a search in my Zettelkasten for everything I've ever said about Z Shell. If you care, if you're just asking a question to troll me, that's a different reason. All right. So I'm going to tell you how to look at that right now. So Z Shell, there you go. There's everything you wanted to see about Z Shell. All right. Help via diff.txt is interesting. I haven't seen that one before. Fish is pretty meta. I like fish. I played around with fish a little bit too. Fish is worse than Z Shell. It absolutely is. But here's the thing. We got to make sure we separate out our shells, right? We got to separate what you're coding in from what you're using interactively. Most of the people that are using fish or Z Shell have no idea how to use bash. They don't even know what cdpath is. They've never used it. And so yeah, again, if you want to use those things, and I did, I gave Z Shell. I can watch the videos of it. I used Z Shell for a full day and a half, and I had a lot of people helping me understand how Z Shell's world view of exportable functions works and everything. But here's the thing: if you're going to get me to use fish or Z Shell, you have to make one convincing argument. Why am I giving up the default? My take on Lisp is I know a lot of people that I highly respect who use Lisp, and I have wanted to learn it. The closest I've ever got to Lisp was TCL. So Tickle's kind of a schema I understand, and I use that for expect, for all kinds of fun stuff. Expect is still a popular tool with hackers these days because you can actually code any interactive TTY sequence whatsoever, whether you're on that machine or not. And that language it's in TCL TK. It's not TK, TCL is one of them. And I believe that's schema dialect, which I believe is a Lisp dialect. I know that the Emacs people are big into Lisp. DistroTube actually called it out. He said that that Emacs is just a big eLisp interpreter, which is true. You're actually just using an eLisp interpreter, and then you can make whatever you want on there, including your own operating system. I happen to think that that's so dramatically against the Unix way of making individual commands and pipelines and stuff like that I would never do it, because I don't want to invest that much cognitive overhead in a language that's not going to get me anything. Yeah, it is an OS, yeah. And you know what? Some people need an OS IDE. They do. Some people need it. Some people need Visual Basic. You can't code C++ for Windows without Visual Basic. Let's just be real here. I mean, as bloated and ugly as it is, you can't code Java for the enterprise without Eclipse. You just can't. I mean, you can try. Some people have, but I mean, there are certain things you have to do depending on what you're doing for them, and I accept that. If Torvalds uses mini Emacs, last I heard, and that's fine. That's fine if that's all you're going to do. I feel like it's a disservice to people to tell them you should use the Emacs IDE for everything. And if you're not doing that, or you should use NeoVim for everything. You should know what it is that the person wants to do, first of all. And if you're helping them in a more generic sense to say, well, I don't know what I want to do, then you should be honest about teaching them things that are going to apply in many careers and many places. And I just believe, I don't know, I believe that is not always done. And so when you guys hear me hate on things, it's because of that mostly. And part of it's just because I just fucking hate it. I mean, this was supposed to be rated G stream. I'm sorry, but it's just like, it's such a bad idea. I just, when I past a certain point, it's like my, pedantic asshole kicks in. I'm sorry. I cannot accept how horrible it is. The defaults are always better. The new OS for all. Yes. Common Lisp is a fragmented ecosystem. Lisp as a whole is even worse. Yes. Hey, thanks for the follows, by the way. Many different conventions, slow, not statically typed. I have somebody asking a question that says, should I get an AI or a cybersecurity major? And I would like to answer this question, if that's okay. Can we answer that one? Evil mode. A lot of people like Emacs in evil mode, but if you're going to do that, then forget using your editor on any remote system or inside of a container. What are you going to do when you're tasked with debugging a container that's gone rogue, and you just need to get onto that little container and run BusyBox VI to just do something really simple right there? Or you can go do your bind mount and all that extra work, but you're on a time clock, and now you're competing against the system blowing up and stuff like that. If you knew VI, you could actually do your job. If you know Emacs, you can't do your job. So there are many jobs that Emacs is the wrong tool, is absolutely the wrong tool. And unfortunately, the people that are in academia love Emacs because they sit in front of a computer and do computations and stuff and org mode and all this stuff. And they're in this little closed ecosystem. They don't have to actually do any work that involves, multiple systems at the same time or anything in the cloud. But they also are teaching you Java usually. So or Lisp. Actually, that kind of person would just teach you Lisp. And we have a lot of fun questions here. This is one here. He's been waiting for a while. Should I get an AI or a cybersecurity major? And I'm going to answer that question as best I can. I think by AI, what you mean is machine learning. Okay, so machine learning and AI, make sure you know the difference, right? So machine learning is a type of AI. AI is used more broadly to refer to anything that acts, including algorithmic things that are not machine learning. Machine learning in a nutshell, this is massive oversimplification, but machine learning in a nutshell is learning to code things that learn in the same way that neurons are formed in your brain. And if I personally had to pick right now, there is incredible demand on both sides of that. I would so far as to say that if you're a developer and you're young and you're in college right now, as I said before, we're seeing, there's lots of things. Copilot. So the Copilot thing is showing you how machine learning is going to be showing up in everything. Machine learning is showing up in game development. Of course, it's showing up in lots of stuff. And let me just say, if you're going to go into development at all, I would spend at least some amount of time learning machine learning. I would do a minimal model and I would learn both. Yeah, you can do both. Cybersecurity with machine learning is going to be one of the hottest areas. The Palo Alto routers are already starting to do this. They're starting to monitor patterns and inspect. They've already been inspecting packets for a while, but stuff. Yeah. If your company uses Nix or Shopify, you have reproducible declarative environments that would circumvent that. You just can't use your Emacs version in your corporate environment. Yeah. If you have 100%, I'm with you there, capitalist. I am. And we're seeing this with containers too, right? So if you bind them out of volume, who cares what your editor is, right? We're not SSHing into systems anymore. I think cybersecurity is the trades of the computer world. Everybody wants to be a web developer. Nobody wants to be embedded devs or cybersecurity anymore, so there's plenty of jobs in it. So I've heard. I don't know why that is. That's a comment from Coding Steel. I have to tell you, I think that I think that we're having a hard time separating a marketing perception from reality, and it's unfortunate. You can't even look at a survey today. Like LinkedIn will tell you the surveys of the people who actually have LinkedIn accounts and answer them. The most respected engineers I've ever met have no LinkedIn account. They're not represented by these things. Stack Exchange, we already talked about how you can't trust that unless you know who's saying. This is a whole critical thinking thing and critical research, like, weighing. This is a problem with humanity right now, right? It's like weighing your inputs and trying to identify your own confirmation bias for others like that. But you got to know this stuff to be able to have a job, right? It's one of the reasons that I kept going back to the Bureau of Labor Statistics research, even though they're kind of old school and slow, but they do thoroughly go through some of these more conservative companies, and they ask these questions that are not being asked of other people. So when they say the fastest growing career in the world right now is cybersecurity major, increasing at a rate of 32% per year, which is crazy fast. And the second fastest, I think, was what do they say? Software developer. They don't use the word software engineer. I really appreciate that they do that. They gave software developer, and software developer was, I think it was 24% last I checked. And they don't have a data science category. They didn't last year. So that would be the place to look. I think if you just check what's being hired for out there, and you just kind of talk to people who are in the industry, that's really important. The best thing you can do at a holiday gathering or something like that is actually corner the tech person and ask them everything they have to say about their job and everything they know about the IT department in their company, particularly in a big company. If they work, for, I don't know, big companies, government, stuff like that. Because that kind of anecdotal, unofficial research is going to pay off a lot in terms. I mean, that's how people pick stocks too, right? They look. It's like they'll walk through the grocery store and see, hey, is this going to be a grocery store that's going to pick up or not? And because you kind of have to make some of this assessment yourself, you have to get good at it, and it's hard. It's hard. I mean, when I started learning internet stuff, there was nothing on it. Nothing. I knew it was going to be huge, and I learned from the specs, and I read other web pages, and I learned how to make web pages before anybody even there was a single book, like 2 years before there was a single book on it, and I just rode the tide because I was able to see it early. I've been completely wrong on other things. I thought virtual worlds were going to be huge, and I invested 2 years into virtual worlds, and it was a total bust. So, I get predictions wrong too. I really liked CoffeeScript when it came out. No lie. I was like really, really big into Python. I was really big into CoffeeScript, and then no. Big into Ruby too when that came out. So, don't have a whole lot of engineering. Let's see. Do I like to be a developer because most developers don't like engineering? Rode the tide, and literally and figuratively, I kind of did. Virtual worlds like Second Life. Yeah. I was small hacks in Second Life. I built a world. I held conferences. I ran the virtual world for NC Ties in North Carolina, Technology and Education. I built out a whole world there. We did multiple trainings, and we ran a thing called EdTech Retreat. And I got into it from IBM. IBM had 52 worlds at the time, and I ran the IBM Mentors Group, and I had some 900 people that I would work with to help them learn virtual worlds and how to host. Actually attended a conference with the three amigos from the old school OOP world. Was it with their names? I forget now. But they literally were in the room with us. We were sitting there with them. I was like awestruck. I was sitting in a virtual room with the people who invented class-based object-oriented programming, which at the time I was really starstruck with. And nowadays I would never even go to the meeting. So yeah. I've just announced their virtual world last month. Did they really? I see lots on it. Good place to just hang out, idle while coding a chance. Finding places. True story. Here's an absolute true story. Here we go. So in 2009, actually no, in 2007. In 2007, I was obsessed with Ruby. Seriously, I was like, it was because it was the obvious best successor to Perl. And if you don't believe me, go read the blog on Metasploit about why they picked Ruby instead of Perl, and they didn't put Python. Now they'll let you write anything. But Metasploit, when it was first created, made a decision that anything submitted to Metasploit had to be in Ruby. And so I got really into it. I actually had some interactions with Matsumoto, who invented it. And so anyway, I had to drive across town to go to the Ruby meetups, and I found in Second Life, I just went in there during a conference for IBM, and I thought, this is pretty cool. And I was meeting people all over the world. It was really amazing. And so for fun, I searched, and sure enough, I found a Ruby meetup, and we would sit in these like virtual chairs, and I was meeting with Ruby fans, and they were presenting on this slideshow, and I was like sitting in a room going to a Ruby meetup in a virtual space, and I was all alive. I came alive at that moment. I was like, oh my God, this is so powerful. It's the next best thing to being there. And so I put all of my free time into that. And I learned how to make combat systems, and I made surfboards, and then they were interactive. And I made training. I made fire simulation training for a firefighting group. For college, I made a thing where they granted diplomas. I made an interactive HUD for simulation of populating another world that some college was doing. I just was obsessed. I wrote Linden Lab scripting language all day, every day in my spare time. I was just absolutely obsessed. It was just so amazing. And then actually it was a big deal. They switched to C#, and then I learned a lot of modeling at the time too. And then they switched over to, they switched over to actually letting import Blender models and stuff like that. And that was kind of one of the final moments of that, of Second Life in terms of like being a civilian created world. It started to fracture into up until that point, the sandboxes were alive and full of wonderful development. And, you'd hang out with people like AM Radio. You guys know about, I should probably show you. I mean, I could really go down this. I could really go down this memory lane with you, because I had a spectacular time. So many things happened, good and bad. I mean, I actually was interviewed. I was in a magazine because my wife and I met with some friends of ours in Florida that we met in Second Life, and went to Florida. I met a Broadway music star who was singing in there, and we became good friends. And I mean, she was like Belle in the Broadway production, and she and her husband and I, and in New York, we met each other and walked around. It was just so totally cool. So I see people doing this with video chat now. They're doing sort of the same thing now. They're meeting each other. It's just something really. I see sort of this. Is saying that in your person. I see this too a little bit in the Fortnite world. So the whole fun for dancing and everything like that, it has a lot of the same appeal. Just general appeal that Second Life had. I mean, I made money in Second Life singing. I did a lot of my sound equipment I got so that I could go in there and do open mics. We would do open mics, and they would actually pay you like real money. I made houses and sold something called Mopos, which is a pose ball that you could put into any of your furniture if you wanted to make your own furniture. It was just really, really fun. I wish that the idea of Second Life had taken off better. But it's still got a very active community. It's kind of edgy and weird now. It's always been edgy and weird. When I first came to it, I was like, I don't know if I want to be doing anything in here. And yes, in case you're wondering, yes, I did do all this. Anything that you could do in Second Life, I did it. Pretty much every single thing that you could do in there, I have done in one form or another. There's some lines that were definitely drawn. I mean, there's some stuff in Second Life. I am not advocating right now. There's some stuff in Second Life that is like, because it's a totally free virtual world, there's stuff that's happening in there that is straight out of like a terror movie. And there's let's just put it this way. There's like a really, really dark side to Second Life. There's a really positive side. There's people in there. There's Vietnam vets. There's recreations of Paris. There's recreations of the Louvre and amazing art. And there's these constant social gatherings. And there's these teachers that don't have any support who can come in and get support there when they wouldn't get anywhere else. There's all of this good stuff, but because there is absolutely no limit in a virtual world, it's exactly what you would expect. That means that there is also no limit on the negative stuff. I know. Yes, I know. I know all about OpenSim. Yeah, I actually was one of the core contributors to the original OpenSim project. Yeah. In fact, some of my open source content is still in the OpenSim project. So I liked OpenSim a lot. I made videos on OpenSim. My son is actually in one of those videos. I did a whole series of videos called Hey Avatar, which somebody found the other day. Somebody found my Hey Avatar videos. I was so proud because I made my own hair. I did. I made my own hair. I was like so proud of my hair too. I was. Anyway, worthwhile language to learn even for fun. Quality to make it imposter syndrome. Worlds in Unity, yeah. But at one point you could hang next to like AM radio. You got to see AM. AM is like this engineer who worked for one of the innovation centers. He was mostly a Flash programmer, and at IBM. And his identity was, I was one of the few people who knew his identity because he worked at IBM, and I think he's went on to do other things, and he eventually left. But some of his work, I think, has still been preserved. They've been paying money to have some of his stuff preserved. I mean, this is just some random guy who, there's AM, and we would show up at parties all the time. We would like, I don't know. Every Friday night I kind of get the hankering for this. My wife and I actually have been back in here several times. It's been a long time. She was all about the German clogs. So she got herself some clogs and a good skin, and we were going to listen to people play music, and yeah. I think no, there's no VR nukes. Yeah, the thing that killed Second Life was people didn't have computers that could do it. So around the same time that VR got big in 2007, mobile computing got really big, and it became really obvious that enterprises wanted to go more with mobile and less with forcing all their people to have a really powerful GPU. And that's really what killed it. There were also a certain percentage of people, I did tons and tons of training over 3 years, in person, and I was paid to do in-person training and how to help school systems, fire off their own OpenSim and Second Life initiatives and things like that. And there was always a percentage of people who didn't want anything to do with it. They were like, they just refused to do it because it looked too cartoony and gamey. But, I was a real big VRML thing when it came out too. And that was, God, what was that? 99, 2000? And it was way too early. I mean, there was no way people could do it. And so we're kind of seeing this, my game vintage and Go. No, you could, but I wouldn't. I would never build a game engine in Go personally. Depends on what kind of game engine, but I would not build it in Go. Somebody asked. Maybe for fun. We talked about Copilot already. I think Copilot's a fun thing to look at. The biggest question on Copilot is, do you own the code or not if somebody else writes it for you? So, this is the whole thing about Second Life. Chance, there he is. Yeah. I mean, some of these pictures are probably in there somewhere. You should build an engine in Rust. Don't lie. No, I think you should try to build. If you want to try to build an engine in Rust, go for it. I would never do that. No, given how totally horrible that language is for compilation time and its abysmal syntax, I would never do that. Is it good for doing that? Maybe. Yeah, might be a good way to do that. I would rather write a game engine in C++ personally, if I were going to write one. But what do I know? So yeah, I'm trying to find the art in here. Yeah, he made so many cool things. Yeah, see this? I remember standing next to him building this train, and the first thing that I ever made was this multi-prismatic rose, and I put it in here for fun. And this actually gave me the idea for it, and I put it on there. I still have money in Second Life. I probably have several $100s still in Second Life someplace. Yeah, I should probably go get that out. Because you just for a long time, your stuff just keeps selling, right? I've told the story before, but people kept thinking that I made all the sex stuff because my Mopos pose ball they would get it because it was free. It was open source. And so they would put that as the center prim in the couches and sex beds and stuff. And so people would click on the thing and they would see mopos, and it would pop up and it would show them all their sex positions they could pick from. And so they misattributed the creator for it as me. I didn't plan that, but the ownership of the entire thing that you make is all in the center prim. So the prim is like what you do. This right here is probably 2,000 prims right here, if not more. Probably more than that. That's probably 2,000 or 3,000 prims. And because it's not traditional modeling, you actually take prims like a tori and a polyhedron or something like that, and you like move them around and reshape them until you get what you need. And so getting really good with like prim modeling and putting them in place was really cool. At some point, I think they came up with a way for you to wrap all your prim constructions, so you ended up with one mesh, and that would just count against your prim. The thing that killed SL is, at least it killed internal development, was because all the people building in here, you'd build a thing like this and somebody would come into your sim that would have just amazing hair, and they have like 300-400 prim hair that's all scripted, right? And now you get 50 people in at a rave or something, and the sim would just stop. There's no way it could handle that kind of processing power. And because it wasn't designed for that level, so they would make the places you could be really small, but then you couldn't have big gatherings at all. And it's, in fact, they would actually have bots, police bots that would scan you, and if you were over the prim count, they would eject you. So you would have to go home and put in stuff that was less prims and stuff. And so if you had an art sim like this, you could have these big, elaborate, awesome art sims, and then you'd have only like 2 or 3 people visiting at a time because there were so many prims in the sim that you burn up all your prims just on this one engine. And so the entire idea of it was really great, but it was premature because the computing power wasn't there. You got scammed out of some money. Oh my gosh. You sold their armor and the PayPal opened a dispute saying didn't receive item. Yeah, people do that all the time. They've finally stopped doing that, but my son got scammed out of a really expensive hat. It was like a $400 hat from TF2, and they scammed him out of it. You're going to have to remove some of those tiny dragons riding on Improbable Soldiers. It was just so funny because the whole culture of like, I got ejected from Sims just for having a name Mohax. People thought I was griefing. I tell you what, hacking in Second Life was hilarious because you could go in there and grief a sim and put, your whatever creative things you want. You could like alter your avatar to just be this ugliest thing. You could do sexual things people did, and you could just go in here and like just raid people's parties. My favorite thing to do, and it wasn't griefing, is I was like a ferret. I have a ferret avatar, and I would take my ferret avatar to all these like super sexy raves, and I just run around on the ground, and then I like, who's the ferret? And they're all trying to get lucky, and I'm just like running around as a little ferret, totally naked, making jokes about being naked and not having a problem. And it was just so much fun. It was so much fun. I really love it. I wish. The reason I think I loved it is because it was virtual, of course, but it was real. I mean, Fortnite and things like that, you're always distracted by the actual goal of the game. The really great thing, it's like Minecraft for adults, right? It's like everybody comes in there and does whatever. So you want to go practice your singing. If you ever want to take your hand at karaoke, go try to sing over in the corner. Everybody applauds you in their own virtual way and everything. And so the reason I like Second Life is it wasn't so much about a game as it was about people. It was about people and imagination. And to me, that is like, because I was a big Dungeons and Dragons guy and everything, you could go, there was actually role-playing sims where you could get, there's Ollie Bob and the 40 Thieves, and I role-played sort of this distant guy who came there to fight off the Horde, because you had to pick your faction, whether you're going to be Horde or you're going to be the healer or whatever. And you could totally role-play this character in the game and everything that goes along with it, except for you were actually participating in this interactive play that was going on. People love the interactions. Yeah. And that's my sons are actually really, really big into VR chat, and they're making real human connections for better or worse with other people. And the people that I met, God, it gives me, I actually get a little bit verklempt. The people that I met, like that I later would come to meet in real life, became some of my deepest friends that I'll ever, because there's nothing, I used to call it the Disneyland effect. There's nothing that bonds people more than having fun together. I mean, think about it. You know, when you all go into a movie house and everybody is laughing at that movie, at the end of the movie, even if you got the occasional annoying person, at the end of the movie, you somehow feel bonded to everybody in there. And you, when you're going out, you're kind of more polite, like, you know, go ahead and walk, and you're smiling and you're having fun because of what I call the Disneyland effect. You might kill each other on the road driving to Disneyland, but once you're in that big long line, you're willing to hold people's place in line and do all kinds of stuff. And sort of the assholeness kind of goes away. And there's something about having fun together that just is magical. It's really, really magical. And if you can imagine, there's nothing more entertaining than imagining an alternate reality. It's actually super dangerous and addictive because it's totally like a holodeck. You can imagine you're whatever you want in there. I can't tell you how many times I've danced with somebody in there and found out after many weeks of knowing them that they were completely not who I thought they were. I didn't care. It was like, there's just so many ways. I met a stripper once, and I didn't have sex with a stripper, just in case you're wondering, but she was in there because she was a psychology PhD or psychologist, I can't remember. And she was absolutely fascinated to dating you, right? She was absolutely fascinated by humans, who their thinking and stuff. So she would do lots of different things in there and play different roles. And she deliberately, the thing that's really crazy about that is you don't know whether you're getting the real, because everybody else is also doing the same thing. So are you getting an actual view into human psychology when you do that? Or are you getting a bunch of artificial views of human psychology by people playing the role of what they think human psychology should be about? It's like super fascinating. And if you get into this stuff, and I really do, if you get into what motivates people and why they're doing something, and just all of the excitement of understanding human beings and their emotions, it's really, really addictive place to be. These days, there's not enough to really know anything more. We've been 10 years since what? Finding. Oh, did you meet somebody online? I met my wife online too. Yep. For 10 years. Yeah. I know so many people who've met online now, and usually it's going to be in places where you're going to have fun. Now you got to be careful though if you meet somebody here, because if you meet somebody here, they're going to be putting on their best self, and it's also not the real them. It's not the real them. It might be their perception of the real them. And I'm not just talking about physical attraction. I'm talking about emotionally. When you start, there's actually a documentary about Second Life that goes through 3 couples that hooked up and how almost all of them failed within 2 years of getting married and stuff in real life. And it goes through why. And a lot of it's because this inflated romantic idea is not real. So when you're next to them and they stink and they're not taking the trash out, they have no desire to help you with your garden, these kind of things start to build up, and they start to see who they really are when they're not in this pretend fantasy environment, and the relationship falls to shit. So you have to be careful about that, because that's very real. It can very much happen. So let's get it through people. Yeah. What are your thoughts about learning programming when you're 51 years old? Well, I'm 53 and I'm learning Kubernetes. Jack, I think you should go for it, man. I really do. I think you should go for it. You're not dead. I mean, come on, your brain still works. Nothing better to keep your brain active. It's way better than fucking Sudoku. I'll tell you that right now. That's a fact, by the way. If you really want brain elasticity, the writing on this is you should be doing as many diverse activities as possible all the time, not just the same activity that really tests your brain a lot every day, because it will only build that one part of your brain that can do that one thing. So you should be like really mixing it up, and you should be like moving and I actually, you know what, now that I think about it, my wife just signed up my stepson for Tai Chi. I mean, for Taekwondo, and I'm thinking of maybe doing it because learning to move, like doing motor skill stuff, is also good for your brain because it activates anything that stimulates the broader area of your brain, and certainly coding does that, right? I think I was the worst for that than my fiance. We met a lot more confident online and hit some issues when I was younger that are pretty good. Yeah. It's just when I enjoyed all the time so far with Python. I touched C#. Yeah, you should. And and they say Alzheimer's comes from not consistently learning and challenging your brain. I would agree. I don't know if that's like a puzzle, but with very possible solutions. Read that. Yeah, you got to keep active. Work at it. For self-defense, but will get you flexible. Really? Interesting. I mean, I like Taekwondo because I think it might go with my yoga that I do. I mean, people look at me and they hear me rant about Rust and swear and everything, and they're like, "You're a yoga guy. You should probably practice your yoga more." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely fucking right. I should start practicing my yoga more." Why do you think I learned yoga? Because if I didn't have it, if I didn't have yoga in the outdoors, I would be who I was, and you don't want to know that guy. Do I recommend learning? Muhammad says, do you recommend learning C before C++? I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to actually, since we're having a really extended AMA tonight, I'm going to go ahead and answer that question. The answer is yes. And de-escalation requires curricula that includes conflict de-escalation. Yes, I agree. And boxing are best for self-defense and martial arts, so best for mind state. Yeah. Yep. Should I learn C before C++? My answer is yes. You know why? Because C++ is not C. Spoiler alert, C++ is not C. I know they say it is, but it's really not. I mean, seriously, is anybody else? Strager might have a better opinion on this than me. He knows these languages better than I do. Look, you can write C in your C++ program, right? But I think it's fair to say approaching when you're next to them and they stink. Yeah. C is definitely not C++. You can't learn C++ through C, but you can learn C through C++. I don't agree with that at all. I think C++ usually is going to put you into an object-oriented mindset, usually. And, my knowledge of both of these languages is really old. But my experience with C and C++ is that C++ tends to bring you into class-based object-oriented programming and templates and stuff and generics early. And these are really high-level paradigms that are designed to organize lots and lots of code. They're useful for those things. But I think they distract from the simplicity of just learning C and how your computer works and how to manage memory and stuff, because you have to do all that with C++ too. There's stuff to do it for you. But I feel like you'll benefit more if you learn C first and you learn procedural programming, imperative programming step by step in C first, because that's how you think. That's how the computer thinks. The computer does not think in terms of objects. Let's just agree to that right now. The computer is very linear, very, very, very linear, and imperative, if you want to say it that way. I mean, that's what the computer does. So learning C in an imperative way helps you understand your computer better. And then when you start to prepare to write gobs and gobs of code that are going to make your language cry like a baby, maybe it's time. And then, if you have the time, I would learn assembly and then C. And there's ways to do that, but that's not practical for most people to do that. But yeah. So that would be my answer to that one. I do think learning assembly I have not yet learned assembly. I'm still working on it, but I know the general idea of assembly and what Turing complete means and binary math and stuff. And I think it would be helpful for people to picture in their mind what's actually happening in memory, every step of what's happening in a thread of execution at the assembly level, to act. And if you want to learn this stuff, I understand that BrainF is one of the good languages to learn. Like when you do a long jump, right? Anytime you call a function, you can imagine this like live pointer in this really, really, really long linear line of memory, right? And all those memory registers, and the pointer jumps around like crazy to all of these different places. It jumps to the beginning of a function, and it jumps to the beginning of a, and ultimately what's happening is you're being told what your next address is to go to. So you go to this address over here, you go to address over here, and then you can do a function. This is why a memory buffer overflow is about, right? Because it means that you're jumping to a thing and it gets to the end and there's no null to tell you that it's the end. And so then whatever's over here ends up getting executed, because as far as the, low level code knows, it's just about moving that pointer around. And if you can move that pointer to the beginning of what looks like a function, it'll run that code. It doesn't care. And understanding how all that happens at the ultimate low level inside of the computer in that single core, thread of execution, I think is just really cool. I just think it's really cool to understand that what's going on, and everything on top of that is just an abstraction to help us. Everything. Programming is abstraction. So everything above that is abstraction. And the first level of abstraction is assembly. And the second layer of abstraction on top of that is C. And everything else above that is some level of abstraction that somebody thought would help humans be able to abstract better what's happening underneath. And there's varying opinions on all of that depending on what you're building. And if you're building a game, C++ makes a lot of sense with objects and stuff. But if you're parsing, Markdown, object-oriented programming doesn't make any sense, right? It's functional. You want a pure function that's going to transform that stream of data. So at that point, then you got your paradigms up here, and you're doing your thing. What was that? This is fun talking about this stuff, though. You did assembly and then C at the university. Oh, you're lucky. You lucky. Yeah, C is short, beautiful, and concise. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's pretty dangerous. Yeah, it's hella dangerous. But that's why you need to learn C. You need to understand why it's dangerous, so you can appreciate Rust if and when you decide to use it, and so you can learn to write C properly. I like C that it's not OP. Object-oriented programming was a mistake in many ways, I think, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. Jim Coplain, one of the Agile Manifesto signers, and a bunch of other people agree. Class-based object-oriented programming was a huge flaw, a huge mistake. C class in college was the only class I felt prepared for me for LeetCode. Yeah. The procedural programming stuff and then take home work for each week was so fun. Really? Absolutely love C. Like, it made me understand how to split with Python and stuff. Yeah. A lot of beginners in particular might not know this, but Python and C go together really, really well. You could make the case that the reason Python is so popular is because of how easy it is to write C code in Python. And that takes some explaining, I know, but TensorFlow, NumPy, all these libraries are C and C++ libraries that have a Python layer, stub layer on top. And so I've heard that because Python was written with the priority of being able to extend it easily, Go was written with the priority of being highly concurrent and specifically for cloud native applications development. That's specifically why it was made, and compile wicked fast. That's why it was made. Those were the things that triggered it. And I believe that Python was built primarily as an extensible language that was easy to read. And that's why Python rules the day in science and tech, because people hit slow spots, astronomers and people, they'll hit slow spots in the language and they can just write that code in C. And then now they can still use their Python, but they're getting C speed underneath. And that's exactly what machine learning is doing with TensorFlow. To write C in Python. Is there really? Let's see. For optimizing performance and stuff. That's cool. Yeah, I'd love to see that. The one thing in Python I have not done yet is written C code that can be called from Python. And I got to tell you, I'm very attracted to that. Because, some languages do things that are better than other languages. Well, one of the things that that I think Python does better than almost. The thing is, I haven't tried it against Go. So Go and Rust and what are some other ones? Any of the LLVM languages, Crystal, they can embed C in their languages. So this is why you're seeing like TensorFlow libraries show up in Go and stuff, because it's also why you're seeing lots of malware written in Go now, because they're taking all this existing C code and they're embedding it in Go. It's not like they have to wrap it like they do with Python. They're actually embedding it in Go. You can write C code straight up inside of the Go language. And so if you look at the Python GitHub repo, everything is in C. Yeah. Yeah, and Python is a different thing, but yeah. So I don't know, but I wonder if it'd be a waste of time to do that, because these days it's all about Go, because you can write C inside of Go and you can embed it now with 1.16. You can actually embed it all in there. So what you can do in Node? Well, Node has always been C under the hood. It's just a V8 engine, and V8 is all C. Actually, it's got large pieces of assembly in it. Mohammed, what are you saying here? John from YouTube says, learning MIPS assembly. It is really very funny. I should try that. The best explanation ever. Oh, to go deeper. Are you talking about the whole assembly stuff? Yeah. I can't wait to get into that, because, yeah. I actually really like how computers work, the science of how computers work, the Turing stuff and the low level stuff. I'm learning a lot more about that in my Innovators book that I've been reading. Did you know the computers started with looms? Yeah, weaving looms, fabric weaving looms are one of the main influencers of the original computers. C is your favorite hobby language? Need to write it. Going into the capsule of the days of old terminals and crazy tech companies. Yeah, but you kind of are. But then again, the most important operating system on planet Earth is written in C. Linux is hands down the most important operating. Every single remote device runs Linux or some form of BSD Unix. And that's all written in C. Let's see. Why did you create a directory for the Zettelkasten and not just a markdown file with ISOSEC? Because I wanted it to be modular. I'm following. Every one of those is equivalent to a page. Yep. Every one of those is equivalent to a page, and it's all. If you read about Zettelkasten, that's how you do it. You just make half-page cards, and then you keep those cards, and then you can pull those cards all together in different ways and move them around. And that's my version of that. My physical version of that. I don't have to think about it. I just like bust off a thing and then make it be separate. Because I'm going to be bringing all those things back together in different ways to make books and websites and stuff. Right now, it's just all searchable. It's a great way to dump. So yeah, that's the reason for that. Why individual directories for Zettel repos? They're actually called was it Zettel? And that's my take on that. Most of the reason to that too is sometimes I actually want to put other resources in there, Jean. So sometimes I'll put other like a GIF or some other thing. Zettel, yeah. And I'll put something else in there that goes just with that one thing. And I really don't like this idea of having a massive assets directory that's got all your pictures and everything in it. I don't like that. I like it to be topical so I can find it. What else we got? This is fun. Bunch of null characters at the end of your code. All security problem solved. The programmer is thinking, yeah. Even at the ASM level, I have a feeling devletx. I absolutely know what you're saying there. Particularly with all the hypervisor stuff, right? The hardware is just all messed up too. It's all virtualized. Yeah. That is kind of a dated idea about what's going on with memory and stuff. I completely concede that. People often pick up their quietest on the quietest or the guy who acts shyest in the room, but the guy is oftentimes not the weakest. Biologically, the weaker animals will bark more when they bite. Probably true. Maybe that's why I bark so much. I have told people openly, I have met amazing software developers that like make me look like a tiny baby. And I concede that that's not my primary skill in life. I made good money doing it for all my life, but I've met truly good engineers and software developers and stuff like that, and they tend to not talk on YouTube. But my, superpower is connecting people and explaining things, and I'm really, really good at making associations. I can't quite put that into words, but I'm good at bringing stuff from lots of different disparate areas and combining them into something that is way better than any of the things individually. And that's always been my kind of my superpower. Gaming on Linux has become good in recent years. Proton's catching up. Really? Where's what's his face? Hikari Knight. He'll show you. He's doing all kinds of amazing things. Someone hits a unit of defense. Yes. Just walk away. It's true. I have maxed out ego skill. Just keep smiling and making jokes. Too awkward to make it physical for most of the time. Yeah. If you never need to get physical, yeah, hopefully people won't have to do that. Translating something written in C# to Python so you can actually use it. Python is written in C. Yeah, well, yeah. Well, that's some good Go resources. I think you guys sent it. Thank you for sending those. If you look at the Python GitHub repo, everything is C. Yes. Is somewhere we can do a Node. Yes. Node is V8, as I mentioned, it's C. Dino is Rust, actually. I would put Dino up there with one of the most significant projects to be written in Rust. And frankly, it makes sense to write Dino in Rust. If you're gonna write a new language, and you want to be sure that that language is automatically free from any possible error, and you want to take every precaution possible, that might be. I love Ryan Dull, and I think he's doing great things with the Dino project. I don't know if it'll ever be important enough to actually use anywhere. But he tried Go for a while, and he went to Rust because of the garbage collection, which is a fair reason to move. I think that it's an actually very wise decision to do that. Actually, I think writing other languages is potentially one of the really good things to do in Rust, because then those languages will automatically be safer enough. I don't know. But to me, on the surface, if Rust does have a sweet spot, I think that might be one of them. I think that might be one of the places where it could really shine. But I don't know, we'll see. Until people are starting to make Lex and Yak and those kind of tools in Rust. I think some of them already have. I was reading about Pest the other day. It's a pagan version. But it didn't, no, it's bad. It's really bad. It's just no. Random question. Kubernetes distribution networking at work. What Kubernetes version am I using at work? We're using vanilla Kubernetes. We're at 1.21. We're on 20 on most of it, but yeah. What's the stay one of the whole stack? We use well, let's see. We're using Kubernetes. We're reporting to we're using Portis before we're going to we're having problems with Portis recently actually, and we're moving to Harbor on that stuff. Actually, I'm going to be doing some Helm stuff later. I'm going to take a break here, and then I'm going to be coming back. I'm going to be doing some of that. We have just the normal stack, just all traditional Kubernetes. We're not doing OpenShift, if that's what you're asking. Octane Glitter. We're not. No, we're a vanilla Kubernetes house. So, but we run on Red Hat. I don't think that any of that is a corporate secret. So I'm not giving away any corporate secrets. You guys still don't know where I work. Please don't tell if you know. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty, I mean, we got lots of nodes. We got like something like 200K nodes total. But the Kubernetes stack, we probably only have in production, we probably only have, I would guess, like 300 nodes. No, less than that. No, maybe 200 or 300 nodes in production. Yeah, this is something I'm learning about Kubernetes, by the way, if you guys are trying to get into this. It was a real false assumption on my part going into it. Kubernetes doesn't infinitely scale. Yeah. No. In fact, on their main page, it even says that the maximum size they recommend for any Kubernetes cluster is 5,000 nodes. So we're talking about nodes. We're not talking about cores, which is a totally different thing. I mean, we have nodes that have 256 cores or more on them. It's crazy, crazy machines. We've got some machines that have got, it's just insane. I didn't know you could put that many cores in the machine. I knew I'd seen some of them, and I knew 64 was becoming kind of normal. But so yeah, that's the answer to that Kubernetes question. Manjaro is really nice unless you are really wanting to do all DIY architecture stuff. I don't like Manjaro at all. I was really, really burned by Manjaro, bricking my lab by clicking on the upgrade button like they told me to, and then getting yelled at by everybody saying, "Why did you click the button?" I said, "Because you told me you were a nice, happy, feely, mint-like distro, and turns out you're not. You're really Arch underneath, and you treat me like I should have treated it like Arch. How dare you?" I never want to do anything with Manjaro again. Frankly, I don't have any intention to do anything with Arch ever again. I can get Arch anytime I want from the command line. And now that Debian has its own AUR, you heard about that, right? I will thank Arch for that. Yep, I will thank Arch for that. There you go, itfoss.net. There it is in black and white. How's it going, Leo? You switched to IntelliJ and am committing a sin? I don't think so. I mean, why not? IntelliJ, if you're doing Java development in particular, right? I use the, is it called DUR? Did not know that. Okay, what is the AUR? It is Arch Linux. The DUR, there it is, right there in front of me. So the DUR, the Debian user repository, will be the future of Debian. This is super huge. I mean, honestly, the best thing about Arch, let's just be real. The best thing about Arch was the AUR. At the end of the day, the best thing about Arch was the AUR. The ability to distribute and to get stuff really quickly. And everybody always says, hey, I can get stuff more recent stuff. My libraries, I can keep them up. I can keep control. I mean, the number one thing people cite about Arch is always the AUR. And it was the thing that compelled me to look at it the most. I was doing development, and it was way before I discovered Conan the Container and other container approaches for doing builds, which is obviously the way to do it now. And now Debian has its own DUR, which honestly, I mean, Arch is probably going to still be pushing the boundaries like it has. I don't understand. What distro do you use? I use Pop! OS, which is a Debian-based system. Because your distro doesn't matter, people. It doesn't. Your distro does not matter. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Unless you're like doing embedded or something and you need something that'll fit on the machine. We're talking about distros, not operating systems. We're talking about distributions of OS, right? So yeah, there you go. I just want to make the switch from a MacBook to a distro like Arch. I don't know if I would do that. I would stay. Your MacBook's not so bad. I know you hate to hear me say that. I hate Apple, but if you put the GNU utilities on your MacBook, it can actually do a lot of good for you. A lot of, like, the guy who made Go uses a Mac. A lot of people use Macs in the development world. Some people who even make operating systems, they virtual machines and stuff. Macs have great hardware. I mean, Apple has great hardware. So there's a lot of people who swear by Macs for development. I don't know if this is still true. They kind of broke it with the last PowerBook. But you can put Linux on there if you want. I've done that with a lot of Mac Minis. I gotta keep building my cluster. Why is my thing freaking out? Oh, that's something else. Uh-oh. Is this somebody in? Wait. O'Reilly books are worth it. Hey, Suzanne, how are you? Are you in? Are you guys? You guys are in my RC chat. Look at you. It looks really cool. Struggling engineer, how's it going? Where are you connecting from? So you're connected to my RC channel in RDBXGG. Yeah. I don't use it anymore. Thank you for. That's why I have WeChat. Guys, that Freenode channel is going to go away eventually. I'm sorry, they're not letting me have it anymore. They already kicked me out of my own channel. I think for big projects, using something like IntelliJ makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to lie. It's like really, really big projects. Most of the stuff I do is not that big. So, Rob said GIF. I don't know if it's GIF or GIF. I don't know. I'm going to say GIF till I die. I'm considering dropping Windows on my main OS due to consistent issues I have with it. Yes. I just made a huge rant in my status report today about being forced to use Windows. Think about this for a second, guys. Why do people use Kubernetes? They use Kubernetes for developer productivity, DevOps, and all that stuff to increase efficiency in your company, right? If you are putting millions of dollars into a Kubernetes deployment at work, and you're also putting $0 into providing a stable, official Linux release for your people to use as their workstations, you're doing it wrong. Seriously, if your company, if your 20K employees all over the world company does not have an official Linux release for its users to use at home to do their development and stuff, even in their IT department, and you are putting a lot of money into Kubernetes to promote efficiency within your company, you're doing it ass backwards. because you should start with improving the efficiency of your developers first. And then, you add Kubernetes stuff. My system has forcibly rebooted me within the last 3 weeks, 3 times. One of those times was during a critical PD thing where I had Tmux Windows all set up to monitor a system, and I was forced to reboot. True story. Windows is a liability in an IT operations center as the primary laptop for your operators and your SREs. If you don't let your SREs use Linux as their home laptop, and you are putting millions of dollars into those people supporting Kubernetes, you're doing it wrong. I wrote a lot about that today, and I asked my boss directly. I'm actually kind of worried that I'm going to get fired for rocking the boat again. I'm like, but everybody else is not using Windows. I said, yeah, what are they doing? They're using PuTTY. Our entire Kubernetes team is using PuTTY to connect and manage Kubernetes. They don't even know how to use Tmux. They've never even seen it. And they're in charge of the entire HPC Kubernetes platform. And they don't even know it. And their shell scripting is there. It's okay. But I mean, you gotta ask. I'm asking myself all the time. I love these guys. I deeply love them. They've been so supportive of me learning Kubernetes, and it's so amazing. But I just kick myself every day because they're like, I had my manager ask me, why do you need Docker on your laptop? Straight up, true story. My manager asked me why I needed Docker on my laptop. I said, I'm supporting the Kubernetes infrastructure. It's like, yeah, but nobody else needs it. I'm like, no, they actually do need it. I wrote a whole thing about this. And if you're one of the cowboys who's like putting Linux on your laptop and not telling anybody, or turning your laptop into a SOX proxy and then doing everything on your own personal machines, you're actually hurting the world, because now nobody can justify a official Linux, image in the company, because you're getting your work done. You're looking like a rock star while you're breaking all the policies that we choose not to violate. And so now we can't justify doing it because, well, why is so-and-so so efficient? Because he's breaking all the security. And that causes you to throw them under the bus, which you don't want to do because they're your friends. You want to say, well, why? Well, this person's getting their job done. I mean, no, they're not. You have Vim 7.2 on our main login server. You're forcing me to use that over PuTTY to do all of my work, including all of my development? I'm complaining. I mean, all of the people are really willing to talk about it, and they're like backpedaling and saying, well, let's have a conversation about it. And so now I'm like justifying things that should be fucking obvious. I mean, seriously, having to tell your infrastructure engineering team for high performance computing that they need to justify why they should have Docker on their laptops. Docker Desktop blew up, by the way. Docker Desktop blew up. I installed Docker Desktop one day today. It just stopped working for me. Yesterday it just stopped working completely. I had a 4 system upgrade from Microsoft, and the 4 system upgrade fried something in .NET, which just spewed. Yeah. You know what? I've had renewed interest in WSL2. I actually got past the bug in WSL2 by adding a trigger that runs this PowerShell every time the VPN connects. And that got me past the WSL bug in OpenAnyConnect, which is a real pain in the ass. I should probably do a whole video on that. I know there's people in the enterprise all over the place that are being burned by this. And in fact, you should read the issues on the gist. They're like, thank you, you saved me, because these people are trying to use WSL2 at work and they can't use it with OpenConnect. AnyConnect, it just fails completely. You got Docker Desktop to work on Windows? Yeah, I got Docker Desktop to work too, and then all of a sudden it didn't work. I am not kidding. This is exactly what happened. Yeah, it does kill RAM. You don't have a lot of RAM. Leo, it says, how do you fix the missing libraries, pages, and other files when compiling packages in Docker? I add them. Leo, you know what? You need to go look at Conan the compiler. I actually have videos on that. Leo in YouTube land is calling me out on compiling and stuff. So I actually did a thing on this. Fids Conan. So go watch the video Conan the compiler. Show you how to do that. I actually prefer to do my builds with a Linux image now. I actually do the same. My Tmux build has the same thing. Yeah, if you go look at I have a Tmux build video that uses that has all the libraries in the Docker file. It pulls them all in. Yep. I mean, Void Linux looks interesting too, but I don't know why I need it. Why would I need it? The problem is that you have to copy some other files manually. No. Leo, I disagree with that. I love having you here, but I totally disagree with the idea of picking a distro based on how easily it is to build stuff. That's like totally not container think. And one of the areas that I think containers can most significantly improve the developer's world is these questions you're asking. So, in fact, if you look in the DevOps world, one of the places that containers are really shining is companies are creating a build distro container, and they're using the container. It's got all the stuff in it that they need, and then everybody is doing independent development against that container. Whether or not they actually log into the container or they just run it, there's lots of ways to do a container. But and then they can upgrade the container and make sure all the stuff's in it. Yeah. Even SSH into a Linux machine these days is not done. I don't ever SSH. The only system I SSH into is our login system, which is the design of it. Every other system that I work on, all the pods and everything, I'm all Kubernetes, K-control exec into them, and there's SSH under the hood, but you don't ever see it. I didn't want to use it because I can just Linux to a virtual machine. Yeah, if you can just SSH into a virtual machine and do it from there. The problem with that is that is going to bite you eventually, particularly if you're a developer. And I kind of live straddling the developer land and operator land. And if you're a developer and you're told you can't do any development unless you have an SSH connection to a remote system, that is a huge no-no. If you're going to add just the network latency with SSH, even to on a fast connection, is enough to annoy the crap out of me. The reason that Git was developed in the first place is so that you can do localized development and then phone home and commit everything up to the mothership. That's the purpose of it. And if you're not following a GitOps kind of approach, or if you're not following a Git, in general kind of approach to your development, I think you should do the same thing for your SRE scripts. I don't think any code should be written at all that doesn't live in a Git repo somewhere. And I can't give the details away, but we had a problem. We've had two problems recently, actually. We had one problem that happened, and and it screwed up something in our cluster, our Kubernetes cluster, related to labels or something, I think. And nobody had any idea what the code was that was run. And there was nowhere to review the code. It wasn't in GitHub or anything. There was no peer review on the code. The code was just run, and nobody. So then the question becomes, well, should you have to approve of everybody's code before you run it in your Kubernetes cluster? And if you're an operator or you're a Linux admin, and I think at some point you should start creating a snippets library of the standard ways to do things, so that you can avoid those kind of errors and help the newbies like get up to speed. And I'm always thinking of the person coming after me. Always. I'm always thinking about who's going to come after me. How are they going to step in and fill my role if I go on to something better? And it's this scarcity mentality that can really screw you up. It's better to assume that you're going to get something better, the anti-scarcity mentality, and then prepare by saving, But in this case, I didn't see the code. Nobody could see the code, and so we had no idea what was going on. It was kind of embarrassing. Because I was like, I asked a question. I said, do you think we could start saving some of this code before we, apply it to everything in our environment? Yeah, let's see. 2 compilers, one in Go and one in C. Yep. No, they don't. I don't think they do. No, there's C Go and the Go. They're different. There's actually another compiler for TinyGo Raritan, which is for embedded. I've seen some games actually running better on Linux and Windows. Don't know about that. Most games run better on Linux. Check out the Chris Titus Tech. Yeah, he does some tutorials on setting up. Chris is awesome. I love Chris. I love him. He's one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. I actually saw Chris a long time ago. I saw his Manjaro video. It was the first thing I ever saw from him, and I really love the dude. I love everything about him. I just love his style. I love how honest and authentic he is. I love how he openly is just there to help people and try his best. And if he doesn't know it, he's like, I don't know. Just absolutely love that about him. Moving soon. Chris is on and off. He doesn't YouTube all the time. He goes in and out. Computer in depth. Yeah. We are going to do a whole thing on building your own Linux PC. In fact, I decided today, I bought another monitor for this. I decided today that I'm going to set up another way to monitor so that when we get to like building computers and stuff, I'll be able to have a window that is the terminal of the computer that's being built, so that we can I can take you through how to do Linux installs and stuff like that and show you on the screen instead of just stick a camera in front of it, which we could also do. They both work. Yeah. So, yeah, yeah. And go down with Vim. Then here's the thing. You don't have to just use Vim, right? I just think you should learn it. I don't think you should learn it all the time. I used VS Code for a full year and loved it. I loved it so much. I started telling people that had been here for 4 or 5 years that they needed to start looking at VS Code. No kidding. And one of them just laughed at me, just shook his head. He said, no, I'm not doing that. To this day, Gabe, where are you, out there? He still laughs at me for that, because and then he asked me to do something where I had to pull up an editor really quick, and I was sitting around waiting for VS Code. So the answer is, it's not all or nothing. It doesn't have to be. I'm going to be the first one to tell you, if I'm working on a massive code base, I would be much more inclined to use VS Code. Now, here's the thing with me. I would never use Emacs for that, because when I'm working on a huge code base, I want all the graphics, gizmos, and weird stuff like that. At that point, I probably would give in and probably be okay with it. Now, you can get by pretty well through searching and the Unix way and command line, and a lot of Linux core C developers have been doing that forever. They've been doing Emacs or the terminal with Vim and all that, and they're really wicked fast and everything. But I don't know. It depends on what you're doing. I would never do any C development in VS Code, but yeah, yeah. Like, I can't explain why Go binaries are so big, because they're statically linked. Yeah, but they're only slightly bigger than Rust binaries, and they're way, way bigger than C binaries. The people made the decision. By the way, compare them to a JVM, right? So the reason Go binaries are big is because they are statically linked. So every one of those binaries has all the stuff in it, which is why they're super popular with hackers right now. Hackers love them because when you send a Go binary down, it doesn't need to have any dynamic libraries installed on the system. It can just do its thing. VS Code is still better at debugging interface for C and C++ than Emacs and Vim. I don't know. I don't have enough information on that. I would really be curious on that. I mean, I wonder if, what I would really love to know if there's anybody doing any kernel development in C with VS Code. I think it would be very, very hard to find like a core team member using anything but Emacs for that. And I would agree with that. So I don't know Emacs. I don't have any intention to learn it, but for that, yeah, that's not somebody who has to be productive on any system anytime. That's somebody who's like really needs a highly organized tool, and that I could get behind. More corporate capable. I think, yeah, yeah, there's a lot of reasons to use a Mac. I love my Mac for watching movies and stuff. And that's all I do on it these days. I hate the keyboard. No, I hate Windows. Yeah. Yeah. If you, Mac got really popular because it's Linux under the hood. It's BSD Unix. And it kind of trounced Windows when it came out, and it had that really powerful underlying thing. Developers really loved it. And now Windows is catching up with all of its Linux WSL2 stuff. Word and Pages, Brew plus Docker on a Mac. Yeah, Brew plus Docker on a Mac is great. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Brew Docker, if you put Brew and Docker on a Mac, Docker is like the great unifier, if you ask me. So yeah. SSH native on the command line. I remember that. This is kind of old chat here. I'm sorry, I'm catching up. Putty stuff sounds terrifying. I know. Don't even get me started. Do you have any idea? It's like at a certain point, guys, can I just come back to this? At a certain point, when do you throw your hands in the air and go, I need to go someplace else? If you have to argue at all with your team to justify to them why even, Linux plus tmux and Docker is better for supporting Kubernetes than Windows with Putty on it. If you have to have that argument at all and try to make your case, then I don't understand if it's worth, I don't know if it's even worth having a conversation at that point. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I need to move on. I need to find a company that actually knows, that has a team that appreciates these basic things and understands how basic these things are in the world of, in this world. And if they don't, it's not my job to educate them, and I'm the newbie. So they're like, you don't know anything about Kubernetes. I'm like, I absolutely don't. But I know how to split the screen during a critical emergency on tmux, and I don't know. It's hard because I don't want that. I would rather leave than have bad feelings. I know that sounds really bad. I'm not planning on leaving, just in case you're wondering. I'm not, but I don't know. I figured out last from this that my mom wanted to set up her TV box that is based on Linux. Yep. There you go. What about SSH keys on Windows? That breaks secret or private key. I don't know about that one. The only thing that sucks is there's no X11 on PowerShell. No, there's not. There is X11 for Windows. Yes, there is. It's on WSL2. I've only done basic home related SSH stuff. Yep. Dismiss Putty and OpenShell. I mean, SSH from the command line is the way to do it, right? The end. Yeah, I mean, Putty's open source. This is the thing I can't understand. Putty is approved officially by this company, and WSL2 is not. WSL2 is officially not approved by this company, but Putty is. And I can't talk about that anymore. I just found it interesting. PowerShell had SSH now. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Personally didn't Putty. Singularity over Docker for security reasons. Yeah, there's definitely reasons with Docker that are a problem. The real question ultimately for a large corporation is, do you give your users admin access? Because you can't do any of that stuff without admin. And Linux is pretty much just giving them admin access. You can't give somebody a Linux workstation and say, no, you can't install anything. It's stupid. So I looked up installing Docker on Windows and just smelled like this won't work. Actually, Docker Desktop worked really great for me for a very long time, and until it didn't. As like everything else on Windows, and now I won't do it. It's actually better to do WSL2 and then run the Docker installer inside of WSL2 than it is to do Docker Desktop. I've been having a lot of success with that. That works fine, and then it's just the same as if I was running my own Linux system. I made a huge rant against WSL2 recently because of the bugs with the VPN connection stuff, and I'm going to have to make a new video that says, okay, I hate that, but here's how you get around it, and this is the best you got if you're forced to use Windows. But keep complaining and see if you can get Linux on there. Seriously, having Windows as an operator or a system administrator is just so painful. Yeah. Using Docker Desktop. Docker Desktop is like point and click. If you're just using Docker, it's different. It does kill your RAM, but it's not, Docker wouldn't work in WSL install, neither would VirtualBox to get rid of WSL2. Really? Sad. That's just so weird. You must, I wonder if, I use Docker with WSL. It's very slow and consumes lots of RAM. WSL needs a lot of work. Awesome idea, but for me right now, yeah. A virtual machines are slower than Docker and WSL2 for me. Yeah. SSHing into a Linux machine, that's how I did SkillStack for years because it was the easiest to get people ramped up on, but it requires them to have an internet connection and it requires them to be dependent on your server. So I don't like that method for development at all. I talked about why. Linux VM. Yeah. I'm so aggravated that we have to use Windows at work. Me too. I'm trying to set up Vim, tmux, and Docker WSL in it, and it wasn't working so decently. Yeah, that's what that's Octane. That's what I'm doing right now. That's what I'm trying to do. I got Vim working pretty well on WSL2. Plugins, editing RC files. Yeah, which is why you need, look, coding still. If you want to do that kind of stuff, let me know because that's what we're doing. We're doing it in containers so that, and we're putting everything in GitHub so you can just pull it down. It just works. Your project team uses VS Code and they recommend it. A lot of people do, but I don't. There's a lot of reasons not to use VS Code. I even taken a Unix terminal with a package manager built in somewhere. Yeah, for sure. A good way just to use Windows. Me too. No good way to install Linux on an old computer with CD. No. I can confirm some games run better on Linux. Yes, the old DVD is broken. Don't know. It has to have a USB. Otherwise, there's no way. There's no other way to talk to it to get data on there. You can do a net boot. Does it have internal lighting? Does it have network connectivity? Does it have network connectivity? If your computer has a network connection, you can set it up to do a net boot and have it download the OS. Yeah, I actually want to do that with my Raspberry Pi cluster because then what you can do is you can change the image and all of your things when you reboot them, they all get the fresh image. It takes a little longer for the download, but NetBoot's pretty cool. Yeah, I want to try to do that. I actually had an engineer tell me, Vera actually said that it's having a hard time finding people who know how to do that. Burning Ice says, from what distros CD isn't as big enough to obviously. I like VS Code a lot personally, but I have been having fun trying to learn Vim. Yeah, I like them both. It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? I want to say that again. It's like, right? VS Code is nice. It doesn't feel like a Microsoft product so much. It isn't. In fact, when it doesn't feel like it, when I started using VS Code, I could not believe it was a Microsoft product. I was blown away. And I thought they were doing some fancy. When I found out it was an Electron app, I about fell over. And they were optimizing the whole thing using canvases. That's how they get that speed, by the way. Now, VS Code is a web app. It's an Electron web app. I cannot see how they got that thing to be so performant until it's not. And then you get a few plugins in there and you're dead. And that's when I gave it up. Any updates about your C plans? Nope. No. There's so many fun things to do But your old PC, do you really want to be bigger? I have to really truly master Kubernetes before I do anything with C coding and assembly like I talked about doing. I talked to my wife about it, and she said she'd be really excited to do all that. And I'm just looking at my clock and the reality. And I've got to. This is fun tonight to do this AMA, but I really got to do that. There are Docker containers that host VS Code. I don't know about that. Do you use Rust? You can ask me about Rust if you want. We've already beat the heck out of it. You can go back and watch the earlier part of the video. I'll publish this video into the AMA. I'm going to publish it. I'm going to put a warning in it because it does have swear words in it. But I'm going to go ahead and publish this on the AMA section. It's a long one though, so we'll see. I don't know. You tell me why I should use Rust. Let's do it that way. I'm sick and tired of justifying my not using Rust. You tell me why I need to use Rust. How about that? Seriously, the burden of proof is on you because I'm using a language that billions of people are using in $1 trillion industry, and I'm making crazy gobs of money by coding in this language. And I'm coding in Go and Shell and Python and Web. I'm coding in established languages. If you're going to tell me that I need to drop all of that and learn Rust, you need to tell me why. And if you, so I'm done defending myself against the attacks that I'm some less than because I don't want to learn Rust. Go, Shell, Python. Well, you have different domains to me. What's your domain? Seriously, tell me what your domain is. Do you have a domain that actually needs Rust? Memory safety isn't a domain. It's a total lie. Do we have to do this again? You're going to get a new wife when you use Rust. You can assign to a map in Rust without using a mutex. No, you can't. Not if you're doing embedded and you have to turn unsafe on. No. Pursuing game dev in C as a C++ replacement is definitely a domain. Daver, I agree. If that is a domain I would love to see Rust succeed at. Honest to God, I've been saying this since the beginning. If Rust is going to win, there's two possible places I think it could win. One of them is to replace C++ in game development, which lots of studios have been very vocal about. And the other one, I already said, is developing other languages like Dino. Dino is not a big one, not a big project, but it is. I'm really fascinated by their decision to use Rust for that. I'm also intrigued by Gamazel's use of Rust in creating fuzzable operating systems. So those are some areas that I think Rust could have a foothold in, but it is nowhere near Go, and it's been out longer. So I'm not holding my breath because apparently everybody loves to talk about it, but there's nobody doing anything in it. There's just no one. There's nobody doing real work in it. There's a lot of conferences and talks and doing stuff like that, but there's nobody with real significant work. Not some little blog about how they're using it in the enterprise with no details. You know, Alacrity is a pretty solid example of an effort to try to use it. There's been a few, like, I don't know, was a Rust grep is another one. I mean, little things like that. Those are nice. Those are not Kubernetes and Docker. Somebody show me an example that's that big. And then maybe I'll think about it. But I do hope, I legitimately hope that Rust has a place for C++ replacement in the area of game dev. I think that might be a place. But I would never do it. If I were choosing to be a game developer now, I wouldn't waste one fucking second learning Rust. I would spend every day of my life learning C++ and Unreal Engine game engine and maybe C#. And if you've got to learn C++, you have to know, if you're going to go into game development, AAA game development, and you're going to try to enter that realm without knowing C++ and C#, forget it. And if you think you have enough room in your brain to learn Rust as well, just for fun, great. welcome to the world of superheroes who can do that, because the rest of the world who's working for AAA game development shops is going to sap every bit of your cognitive essence to learn C++ and C#. That's it. And they're not going to have you learn anything else. There's a couple studios who toyed with the idea of moving to Rust. And then the one that I know of said, no, we're done. We're not doing that. Because the entire industry is already using those things. And so if you're choosing to learn Rust as your first language and you're aspiring to go into game development, you're a fool. You're an absolute fool. You're probably a wonderful person, but you're a fool, because the first thing any one of those game development interviews is going to ask you is, okay, show us your games that you've made and using the established game engines of the day. And they're going to be like, and you're going to be like, well, I did all my games in Rust. Really? Okay. Have fun with that. We'll call you. I just don't get it. Why would you rewrite? I mean, millions of lines of game engine code has already been written in C++ and C#, and you are going to redo all of that in Rust because it's memory safe and highly performant. Really? I mean, here we are in Rust again. Let's get asking you. Oh no, I got to go to the bottom here. I'm going to jump to the bottom here. Here's what I think. Well, for context, I've got the past success to fund myself, so I can take risks with my time. I hope the next generation coders will just say no to the legacy as it comes to it. And I applaud that. I totally applaud that, Daver. Daver, I do. I applaud you on that. I wish you success. I sincerely do. Gets rewritten. We did every project. If your life goal, if you've had successes and you have enough money to live on your own and do it, go for it, man. I want to see that come in and take over the world. It's my anti-dinosaur strategy, perhaps. But here's the problem: what's new coming to the strategy? My service to the next generation. What to redo everything that already works in Rust? How is that doing them a service? I don't understand that. Help me understand. I don't understand that. More maintain. That is so not true. That is 1,000% untrue. You think C++ is a maintenance nightmare? Okay. I mean, you probably have more experience with C++ than me. I would ask Strager that question. I think he would disagree. But yeah, no, dude, I got no love for C++. I got no love for C++. What I want to know, have you gotten up to a code base that is big enough to actually test the compile times? I mean, to not be modern C++? Yeah. Right. Then you get rid of all the buses and trains because other people are gross. We'll have to be waiting on rockets and low capacity electric cars. No, when you do install tmux, it's not enough in my case. I have to copy install libevent man page and tmux. When you, you're saying my installer doesn't get it there for you. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Open a ticket. Can you open RWX Leo? Can you open a ticket on my GitHub? Can you please open a ticket on my GitHub and say you need to install libevent? Yeah. Things like async asset loading. I could see that. Compile times on Rust are improving, and it is highly scaling due to its modular boundaries, etc. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Dave, you're actually somebody whose opinion I would actually respect from the Rust community. I'm sort of playing, people. Don't get offended. But somebody who's actually done a significant project, like really significant in C++ already, who's trying to make the world a better place with Rust, who's also doing something significant. And I've been saying that all along. Yeah. A game engine with an asset stream. I think, honestly, I do think that one of the sweet spots for Rust could be game development. And I've been watching that space. Dave, do you know the before we get too much into this, these people have been listening to me hate on Rust all day. If you want an actual job right now, Rust is not the thing. We're talking to someone who's independently wealthy because they've been successful in another language, and now they're choosing to invest their time and money maybe making Rust into a potential alternative. This is what all these companies are blogging, and everything about. They're all in experimentation mode. They're not producing anything of any significant value of the level of like Docker or Kubernetes or something like that. That's why I don't think it's worth your time right now. But if you're doing something like what Dave is doing, and you're considering a new future that's built entirely on a solid foundation, kind of like ARM versus, AMD chips or something, AMD 64, that kind of thing, then maybe but that's not going to materialize for years, if ever. And there's not going to be any Linux kernel rewriting in Rust. That ain't happening. If anything, we're going to get a few little abilities to inject kernel code from Rust and driver code, and that might be a good thing for the world too. That's one area that might benefit from this. Game Imagine with ACID streaming, yeah. When the cell processor hit us into my, I said we need a new language, so died. But Rust is that language. You think? Yeah. Rust still depends on the LLVM. Does it still have an LLVM dependency? I thought that got written out of it. No. I'm misinterpreting. LLVM is no longer a virtual machine. Linus himself will never use Rust. No way. He said in that post that gets misquoted all the time that the language that it's at some point they might open, driver development to another language at some point, and that language might be Rust. That's exactly what he said. So, but he's still very much in the C land. LVMIR, Air6, whatever. Yeah. I knew it was an LLVM language. This is one of the reasons I hate it, frankly. I'm sorry. No offense. But it just proves that the people who made Rust don't know how to make languages. Dude, compare the internals of the compiler efficiencies and the actual handcrafted compiler for Go to the internals from Rust. There's no comparison at all. I like that the LLVM is enabling Jupyter and Crystal and all these other fancy languages, people to get their hand dirty in languages. But when it comes to true language craftsmanship, like old school craftsmanship, Go is the best one out there right now. Then assembler, right? Nothing better than C. Yeah, C. There's just nothing better than C. Rust would help him for kernel dev much. I don't either. But so Dave, talk more about this game engine stuff, because you got me. I'm really intrigued by this, because as everybody here knows, I'm happy to alter my position on things when I have new information, and I have been challenging the Rust community since they come in here. Show me something big in Rust, and there's nothing. But one of the areas that I think could be really big, I've said the two areas I think Rust could be big. And one of them is, creating other languages, which are, and creating, I thought it was going to be big and embedded, and all the embedded people are all hell knowing me. They're like, oh my God, no, I would never do that. It's all about embedded C. Pretty much everything I write is in unsafe mode anyway. Why the hell would I add another language to the mix? This is what the embedded people are telling me. They're not interested at all in Rust in that space. I thought maybe they would be. So I'd say Rust in aerospace critical systems is another one. A lot of Ada through the formal method tooling. Rust is a replacement to Ada. Okay, there's something that I might be willing to open my mind up to. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so far, none of those, you're talking size at that point, right? Nothing better than you somewhere, right? I really hated a lot of their choices. I've been learning them. I hate that they could not decide on a concurrency pattern. They went back and forth on concurrency. How many times? I've been studying this language, guys. I have not been doing it, but I've been following it. Maintainable. Yeah. It drops in for C++. Rust programs are easier to refactor. One of the things I can't get over with Rust is just how fucking ugly the syntax is. Oh my God. I cannot look at it. People give Perl shit all the time for being hard to read. And then I see Rust programs and I just want to shoot myself. They're so ugly. They're so bad. I would rather look at well-coded C than Rust any day. It's a good thing you can only write safe programs, because you certainly aren't going to understand what the fuck is happening in there, because the syntax is so ugly. Okay, again, big parts of the engine. Rust is shiny for hobby projects only. This is why, okay, I've been saying this, but I'm listening to Dave here. I'm listening to Dave tell us about his experience writing a game engine in Rust. Because writing your own operating system in Rust for fuzzing like security sort of makes sense. If that's your thing and you want to do it quickly, you don't want it to have problems. Okay. Writing, I mean, the Oxide people and Brian Cantrell, I have a lot of respect for him, and he's a big Rust guy now. But he's the one who openly said it was not time to write an operating system in Rust. He said it himself. And is it time to rewrite the operating system in Rust? There's a video on this. It's a fantastic video, by the way. And he formed a whole company based on building stuff up in Rust. So Rust is being also, I just said that. I just mentioned the Rust fuzzing thing like way before you mentioned that, Rustafarian. And I think that's probably a good place for it. It doesn't mean it has to be done in Last Miles could bust that stuff out in C just as fast as Gamoza could write it in Rust. So I'm not convinced that fuzzing is a big enough sweet spot. I think, however, I think writing your own language could be, what I would really love to see with Ryan Dahl is, since Ryan Dahl has dealt with V8 stuff, he's probably been exposed to the V8 optimizations, and he's aware of like the low level internals of that. Maybe not, maybe he's just wrapping V8. But if you've ever seen a video on optimizations of the V8 engine, it's pretty amazing. And so there's a part of me that's like really inclined to think that Rust would be good for writing other languages, because of its, lack of memory pointers and stuff. You wouldn't want to have, in your language a problem like that, right? But there's so many tools established for writing languages that I don't know that would be a thing. And function pointers are important for parallel code. Yeah. Syntax in C++ is ugly. Yeah. Parallel iterator signature is much easier to understand in Rust. Okay. Yeah. I don't know about that one. I'd have to look. Yeah, the good old template stuff. Yeah. You can't even put type signs into C++ type parameters. Yeah, look. The thing I hate most about C++ is the whole template shit that came in 1999 when I started learning C++. I just pretty much they came out with the first version of the template library, and I just threw my hands in the air, and I'm like, no. I'm fine with C and Java at the time, actually, because Dino is a runtime. Okay. That's fair. You're right. You're absolutely right. DevLetX. Yeah, Dino's a runtime. It uses TypeScript. How's it going, Time Traveler? We got some YouTubers that I'm not getting love here. Let me see what they said. Why do people even use anything other than assembly? Thousands of lines written in it. Lol. Take a break and starting on beginner's material. Good night, all. I guess I'm not going to get to good beginner boost tonight. I'll do some tomorrow. This AMA has been a lot of fun. So it's gone kind of long, obviously. But against borrowing in Rust. The borrow checker in Rust actually drives me nuts. But it's supposed to drive you nuts because it's supposed to make you think about that. I tried to teach Rust to beginners, and they just melted. And I was like, no, I can teach C to a beginner. Not Rust, because it jumps right into the borrow checker and all that shit, like right off the bat. Try to explain it to a 12-year-old. It's not, they keep saying it's a beginner friendly language. It's not, it's absolutely not. Those kinds of functional iterators. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to know the template stuff. I know. That's one of the reasons I have been, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about looking at C++ again, because it is still the thing to use for large projects, large, highly performant projects to use C++, period. That's just the way it goes. Java is actually pretty damn close in performance, and Go is, of course, just is close enough. It's right there in performance. It's high enough in performance that massive cloud native systems have been built on it. So it's plenty fast. Besides, most of the bottlenecks are not CPU and memory stuff anyway. You find the compiler, they surprise you do intend way more often C++. Yeah. Do you think Go will change a lot once the generics come in? Yes, I do. And I have... okay, so let's talk about generics for a second. I started out hating generics. I was like, why are you complicating this simplified C? That's a direct quote from the main page. Why are you adding generics? They're not a C thing. They never have been. They're a C++ thing. They're not necessary. And I've changed my opinion on that. I've done a lot of research on generics and why they would need them. I actually ran into several cases where I was writing some sorting algorithms and stuff that would, my very pagan project that has a rooted node tree would benefit very directly from generics. So I have mixed feelings on generics, and my current position on it, and in fact, I mean, M. Dembski, he's actually on the compiler team. He's been over here quite a bit. He's getting ready to deliver on generics. I watched the Brad video on generics. I read Pike say that he's okay with generics and why. And after all of that, I'm hopeful that generics are just going to open and go to further usage by a lot of people. I also believe it's going to push it away from beginners even further. And I think that that's part. I was still hoping that Go was going to stay so simple that it was going to replace Python for beginners. And if there's one overall conclusion about what generics are going to do, they're going to push the language that much farther out of reach for beginners. And I find that super unfortunate. Modules already did that. Modules push stuff out. There's more things you have to do to get going and stuff. And the engineers that are thinking of it are not thinking about, the absolute beginner, because they're kind of trying to balance power and accessibility of the language. And Python's not going anywhere. So I personally was disappointed that they were making the language more complex, but given the usage and the footprints of Go in the enterprise, allowing yet more power to be done, I think by adding generics, we're going to see Go enter the academic programming world even more, because when they add generics, they're going to start to be able to emulate and write code for standard computer science things using generics, because all of those, node tree, linked list, all that kind of construction and thinking requires something that's loosey goosey, and interfaces, empty interfaces are not going to cut it as cool as they are. And so I'm tentative about generics, and I have kind of let go of my feeling that Go is for beginners. And they're totally ugly. Dude, I'm so glad they changed it. Did you see what it was going to be? It was going to be brackets next to other brackets. And the reason they can't use angle brackets is because that's already taken someplace else. I was like, can you please just make it look at least like other generics? And so I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on all of that stuff. So, yeah, that's my exact problem as well. Sorting algorithms and Go. Yeah. So I think what you're going to see, the reason that I'm kind of okay with generics is because even though it's going to push the language out and make it a little bit more complex, a lot more complex actually, push it away from beginners, it's going to push Go into the competitive programming world more, because competitive programming, computer science, stuff like that, LeetCode, right? It's going to be much easier for you to write a LeetCode answer in Go now with generics than you ever could have done before, because you know what I mean? You wouldn't know what your types are and stuff like that. So, and so I feel like it's a trade-off, and at the end of the day, I trust Pike and the gang, and Pike is 100% behind it. He's 100% behind it. He hasn't been writing any of it, but he's been behind it. I'm more bent out of shape about them forcing everybody to use context than anything else. I know they could have come up with a more elegant solution and to force everybody to put context as a first argument to every function. And that is probably my biggest complaint about Go in the last 5 years. That and the way they did modules. Modules is a disaster. I mean, it's good now, but I mean, just look at the replace issue. I won't even don't even get me started. So C# is really ugly too. Yeah, C# not too bad. Hi, Pedro. So yeah, C++ and Rust need generics to implement custom containers essential for niches. Yeah. And actually, this is one of the areas where when Go gets generics, it's going to be even harder. There's going to be so much template code out there. It's not template code. It's not template code. Every time you talk about generics, they're like almost the next thing that comes out of anybody's mouth is, oh, these are not templates. There's no templates here. It's like, sure looks like a template to me. Like, no, there's no templating. This is not what's going on. And because it looks like templating, right? So yeah, Modules were very confusing when I first started from the Python style. Yeah, Eternal, I know. That's why the reason I'm complaining about modules is because they didn't think about beginners. The Go team is still, I feel like the Go team is migrating more towards engineering influences and away from its roots, which was the simplest C version on earth. And that unsexiness of the language, which made it so amazing, still is one of its greatest draws. It's also at direct odds with Rust. Rust is not pretty to look at, never will be. It's impossible to make it pretty to look at. So yeah, Go C Bash and you don't need anything else. I agree. I think Go C Bash is going to get me anything I need. Maybe C++, but I don't know. I don't know. I would, if somebody, I think, I'm going to make a prediction here. So Dave or somebody like him is actually going to implement an entire kick-ass gaming engine in Rust, and going to just, Rust is beloved by the people who like making gaming engine stuff, the Node community and the Rust people like that. And those kind of people, all those gamers, everybody else, game developers, they could, if these kind of people enjoy programming in Rust for some sick reason. And yeah. And so those people are going to end up propelling Rust into the game development world, but they're going to need something to rally behind. And I don't see that right now. So yeah, I mean, the cargo ecosystem will let me cut the bits up and share the others. I wish the cargo ecosystem was viewable on a terminal browser. It's all JavaScript dependent. Just proves that Node think permeates the whole Rust project, which just terrifies me, man. Node think is super dangerous. The Node people would have everything be JavaScript. I mean, everywhere. They would, they don't see that they're directly violating MIT's mission statement, not to mention making documentation and blogs impossible to read without JavaScript enabled. So I'm going to take a break. Actually, I'm probably going to go to bed. So I'm just going to call it tonight. It's been really fun. And you know what? I'm really glad we had this, because at the beginning of the night, as you heard, there was many times during the night that I was ranting against Rust. And it's not so much, as I said, it's not so much about Rust as much as this idea that people are not doing their own evaluation. But it takes meeting somebody who's trying to do something really legitimate that's in the sweet spot of a potential language like Rust, like Dave's doing here, to kind of, that's the kind of thing I would like to encourage. And I'm not saying don't try new things. I'm just saying don't listen to people tell you what you should do until you know that they understand what you want out of your life. And if someone's telling you to learn Rust because it's the best thing to learn, and you're trying to learn a language and get a job, Rust ain't it. So, yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate the conversation. And if you need to see unsafe in Rust, so why the hell need to use it? Yeah. Yeah, in Rust. Yeah, right. And segment it out. Right. Well, I mean, there's a lot of embedded engineers who disagree with that. And see everything is unsafe. That's madness. It's not madness if you approach it that way. If you approach it as knowing it's unsafe, then you actually, you have an assumption that it's unsafe to begin with. And if you know what you're doing, you don't make mistakes. So, but don't tell us the language is safe, because it's not. Rust is not a safe language. That's been proven over and over. I think that's it. I'm going to see you guys later. It's been really fun. Maybe we could go raid somebody. And from the logic of safe land is, yeah, but yeah. See, safety is in the eye of the beholder. You know what I mean? I could make an argument that Rust is less safe than Go just because of the complexity of the syntax. Just that alone makes the language less safe. Because you could have logic errors. Most of the most damning errors in all of coding have nothing to do with memory safety. Most of the prevalent errors are memory safety errors in C and stuff. But some of the most dangerous ones are logic errors. So saying a language is safe and building up the impression that a language is safe is a dangerous thing to do to a beginner, because, but Go gets the safety from GC, so it can't take over game engines. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And somebody was asking me if they should write their game engine in Go, and I said no, that's probably not what I would do. I was surprised that they did CoreOS and K3OS in Go, and this is operating systems written in Go. And I'm like, what? They said, yeah, everything but the kernel is all Go. And I was like, what? I think C# is good for that. Or C++, yeah. And that's kind of where I'm agreeing. Let me see if I can go raid Mr. Schrager. Schrager's on, you said, though? Alrighty, let's give him a raid. I don't know if do I have to put the A in front of it? I am not. You know what? I did a whole thing. So I could do this from the command line, and then I disabled it. I need to get that going again. Oh, is he watching me before? Oh crap! Did raid? That's fine. Let's go raid him. Yeah, you guys. Alrighty, all right, you dweebs. All right, you dweebs. It's good at job. I agree. And I think Unity. If I were going to do game development, I would probably do on Unity at this point. I was a real big Unreal Engine fan for a while, and I've changed my mind. But I don't do game stuff. I used to teach it, but no. All right, we're gonna raid Strager. Say hi on my behalf. I'm gonna take off. Be good, and I feel good. I feel good about this. We had a good talk. All right, take care. And to the YouTubers out there who are still here, I'm just gonna say hi to Strager. I'm like, and then we'll be off. Hosting Strager. Worst raid timing ever. I did the thing you should never do. I did that thing you're not supposed to do. Uh-oh. I can't hear him. You guys still here, or did you guys go over there? You went over there, right? Tell me you're over there. Some of you aren't. Some of you are still chatting at me. I'm like, do we still have people over here? Wait. No, we rated him. It says they still have 44 viewers. I don't get it. Oh my gosh. I don't know. Pixelate, if you can hear me, we were just talking random things. We were answering questions and stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and cut my stream. So make a AMA video, and we'll call it a night. Take care. Bye.